Chapter 2172. By Yun Hongxian chuckled and said, I've let young Master Su see a joke. I originally did not want to be so extravagant, but due to my identity, I cannot do it. As the only child of the number one peerless family, the future successor, she was destined to have her own show, whether she liked it or not. After pausing for a moment, she said, Young Master Su, please come with me and rest for a while. I will arrange Tian Jingchen for you. Su Yu understood the preciousness of the white dust cleansing artifact. Yun Hongxian might not necessarily carry it with her, so he followed her to a quiet house. The style of the house was elegant and fragrant. It should be for the use of women. Young Master Su, you can treat this as my boudoir for the time being. You can rest here while I report the situation of this plan to my father. As for your assistance, I will explain in detail. This way, you should be able to apply for a grain of heaven's pure dust. Yun Hongxian said. Su Yu's contribution was indispensable for her to come back alive. As his father, who had always doted on him, it wouldn't be a problem for him to ask for a grain of sky-pure dust to repay Su Yu. I'll wait for your good news, Su Yu said. After watching Yun Hongxian leave, Su Yu checked the condition of his body. Currently, he only had a strand and a half of the Daylord's energy left in his body. It was enough for him to use the sword of sunrise and dusk at full power once, as well as satisfy his basic combat needs. His body, which he thought would be extremely troublesome, seemed to be able to be solved very quickly. He heaved a sigh of relief and looked at the soul space between his eyebrows. The human demon and the white-boned Daylord's Tao souls were sealed within. The white-boned Daylord's soul had already been destroyed to the point where it had lost its will. All that was left was the most primitive soul light. On the other hand, the demonic humans had a complete soul. Of course, being in the soul space was useless. Sensing Su Yu's arrival, the human demon shrank into a corner in fear and said, Holy Body Su, for the sake of the fact that I have never hurt you, please give me a chance to live. I can promise you anything you want. Su Yu replied indifferently, You can live, but you can forget about leaving this place. If he went out, it meant that even more creatures would be devoured and harmed. Although Su Yu wasn't a merciful person, he still wouldn't release a demon to harm the world. The human demon's face turned pale. Saint Physique Su, I really don't dare to do evil anymore. If you don't believe me, I am willing to sign a master-servant contract with you and become your slave. In order to survive, the human demon was willing to do anything, even if it was dignity. Su Yu sighed inwardly. The longer a creature lived, the more it treasured its life. An ordinary Tao Lord would rarely become someone else's slave just for the sake of survival. Human devils were beings that had experienced the destruction of an epoch, so they understood the value of life even better. There's no need for a contract. Don't resist. I'll leave a mark in your body, and that will be enough to control your life and death. Su Yu gathered 8 kinds of rules in his palm and condensed them into an 8-colored petal mark, which was embellished between his brows. Although the human demon wanted to resist, he had no choice but to lower his head. These are the seals of the 8 great magical laws of heaven and earth. Once I activate them, they will be destroyed, transforming into world-destroying power. Even if you are a god, a Tao Lord, you will be easily killed. Even sinful girls' powerful and extraordinary domain could be destroyed by the power of world extermination, let alone human devil soul. Human demon rolled his eyes and tried to probe. He was horrified to discover an extremely terrifying destructive power. He sat on the ground with a dejected look on his face. He was really going to be controlled by Su Yu forever. Back then, when Su Yu woke him up from a deep sleep, he was just a small ant that had just entered the martial emperor realm. After so many years, he had become a prisoner. How the world had changed. Copy your memories from me, Su Yu said. Human demon smiled bitterly, adapting to his new identity, and asked, Which part do you want, master? The lifetime memories of a Tao Lord were not something Su Yu could bear with his current strength. At most, he could only bear a part of them. First, about the stone-birth son of heaven. Second, about breaking through to the Tao Lord. Human Demon was not surprised. Su Yu, who had awakened the sacred mortal body, would clash with the stone-birthed son of heaven sooner or later. It was normal for him to understand his situation. At the same time, Su Yu had also reached the end of the martial emperor realm. It was time to seek a breakthrough to the Tao Lord. He copied the relevant memories and gave them to Su Yu. After receiving the memories, Su Yu left the soul dimension and immediately began to digest the two memories. At the same time, in the center of the mansion of the number 1 peerless family, in the center of a huge city that was as vast as a 6-star civilization, in a gazebo, Bai Yun Hongxian was playing chess with a golden-eyed middle-aged man. After a while, the outcome of the game was decided. Bai Yun Hongxian was at an absolute disadvantage. "Father, your chess skills are getting better and better." Bai Yun Hongxian sighed and put down the white chess piece, indicating her surrender. The golden-eyed middle-aged man was the master of the number 1 peerless family, the golden-eyed Lang Jun. It was rumored that his eyes had the ability to connect the future and the past. It was very strange. Once, the number 1 peerless family and the 7th peerless family had a dispute, and the number 1 peerless family was at a disadvantage. In the end, the golden-eyed Lang Jun used the ability of his eyes to connect the future and the past, summoning the river of time to reverse the outcome, causing the 7th peerless family to suffer unimaginable losses. Since then, the name of the golden-eyed Lang Jun had spread throughout the world. "It's not that my chess skills are good, but that you have something on your mind." The golden-eyed Lang Jun's temperament was like dust, not revealing his sharpness, but he gave off an unfathomable feeling. Bai Yun Hongxian said calmly, "Father, you know me well. I am thinking of giving Mr. Su, who saved me, a satisfactory reward." The golden-eyed Lang Jun returned the black and white chess pieces to their positions calmly and said, "Oh, do you know what he wants?" "I know, Tian Jingchun," Bai Yun Hongxian said. "Tian Jingchun." The golden-eyed Lang Jun frowned slightly. Bai Yun Hongxian's heart tightened. "I've already promised him, in my name." "No," the golden-eyed Lang Jun said. "It's not that I don't want to give it. Compared to your life, a Tian Jingchun is nothing. But the Tian Jingchun is gone. Don't the family have hundreds of them in storage? How can there be no more?" Bai Yun Hongxian's heart sank. The golden-eyed Lang Jun said, "In the few years that you were carrying out the plan, the number 1 peerless family and the number 2 peerless family had another conflict because of the Broken Sky Mountain. The 10 great elders and 30 great guests were all injured by the 2nd peerless family's sky shrouding light during the battle. Their bodies suffered incurable injuries. As a last resort, we had to use the Tian Jingxun to forcibly heal our injuries. So, at present, the family has no more Tian Jingchun to give." Bai Yun Hongxian covered her mouth. "How can this be?" "But I have already promised." The golden-eyed Lang Jun said, "Is he in urgent need of the Tian Jingxun? If he doesn't need it so urgently, we can satisfy his other wishes." Chapter 2173. Hearing this, the golden-eyed man frowned slightly and said, "Then, we can only make him wait a little longer. Although we suffered heavy losses in that battle, we still managed to snatch the Broken Sky Mountain in the end. This mountain contains the largest sky crystal mine in the entire 7 absolute civilizations. As long as we wait patiently, it's only a matter of time before we extract new sky pure dust." Bai Yun Hongxian frowned deeply. She found it hard to speak. She had not done what she had promised, and she still had to make Su Yu wait. "Can you guarantee that the first grain of clean sky dust will be given to young Master Su?" "No." Golden-eyed Lang Jun shook his head and said, "This time, those who were injured by the sky-covering light were not only the elders and guests. Many of our clansmen were injured as well." Bai Yun Hongxian's face turned ugly. Even the amount of sky pure dust in the mine was limited, and it was impossible for each person to have one. Therefore, it was very likely that they would personally mine it and obtain the sky pure dust up close. If Su Yu waited here, it was highly likely that he wouldn't be able to obtain the sky pure dust. "Don't tell me you want him to personally mine the ores?" Bai Yun Hongxian felt even more troubled. The golden-eyed scholar said lightly, You can only blame yourself for being too firm in your words. Now you can't fulfill your promise to others. Bai Yun Hongxian's face turned red as she replied, Your daughter has learned her lesson. Your daughter will handle this matter well. With a vexed look on her face, Bai Yun Hongxian returned to her chamber. At that moment, Suya just finished digesting the 2 sets of memories. He breathed out a mouthful of murky air and murmured, If I want to break through to the Tao Lord realm, my body, soul, and laws must all be Tao converted. Among them, the spiritual path transformation was the easiest for Suyu. Most of his soul had already been transformed, and he was only a small part away from complete spiritual path transformation. The transformation of the laws into the Tao required a long period of comprehension and could not be rushed. Finally, the Tao transformation of one's body. One's body had to reach the level of a Tao Lord. This wasn't something that could be achieved just by cultivating one's physique. Instead, one had to accept the tempering of the supreme energy of the heavens and the earth in order to succeed. It would not be easy for Su Yu to transform his body into the path. According to the memories of the human demon, the supreme power of heaven and earth usually referred to the terrifying power of nature. However, since it was able to refine a Tao body, it was sufficient to show that the might of this energy of nature was comparable to a Tao Lord. It was not easy to find such a place. Just as he was vexed, Bai Yun and Red Deity walked over. Su Yu was filled with anticipation. Could his body finally recover? Young Master Su, I am incompetent and did not manage to obtain the heaven's pure dust, Bai Yun Hongxian said honestly. He had imagined that Su Yu would fly into a rage, but it did not happen. On the contrary, he calmly asked, Can you tell me the reason? Su Yu could hear the remorse in Bai Yun Hongxian's heart. She wasn't trying to act shamelessly, but she had her reasons for doing so. In such a situation, he could still listen to the reason calmly. Hearing this, Bai Yun Hongxian felt even more ashamed and said, Young Master Su, this is what happened. After hearing this, Su Yu furrowed his brows. He had come at a bad time. Are there any other dangers within the Broken Heaven Mountain? Su Yu asked. In order to recover as soon as possible, he didn't mind working hard. Bai Yun Hongxian was too ashamed to show her face as she said, Is young Master Su going to mine the ores personally? How can I endure this? Not only did she fail to fulfill her promise of the heaven's pure dust, but she also asked Su Yu to go there himself. Is this how you treat your benefactor? Only Su Yu himself knew that his motives were not pure. The so-called kindness had long been canceled out. It's all right, Miss Bai Yun. Can you arrange for me to go to the ores? Su Yu asked. Bai Yun Hongxian nodded. That's not a problem, but it's too much for young Master Su. Su Yu lightly shook his head. It's all right, Miss Bai Yun. Please arrange it as soon as possible. All right, Bai Yun Hongxian said. The Broken Heaven Mountain, in theory, can only be excavated by the first peerless family. You are an outsider, so you can't enter. So I'll give you an identity. Bai Yun Hongxian took out a blank identity token and carved the words Young Master Wuchen on it. She handed the identity token to Su Yu and said, You can go to the Broken Heaven Mountain as my distant cousin. What she meant was that from now on, Su Yu become a member of the first peerless family. He stared at the identity token, deep in thought. You don't think the identity is good enough? Then changed to another one. Bai Yun Hongxian saw that Su Yu's expression was not right. Su Yu pointed at the 4 words on the identity token and said, There's no problem with the identity, but why young Master Wuchen? Bai Yun Hongxian covered her mouth and smiled lightly. She calmly said, I think young Master Su is a person with a heart free from the mortal world. So, I named you young Master Wuchen. She must have thought that Su Yu was handsome, like an otherworldly immortal, right? Unfortunately, the truth was the opposite. The most difficult thing for him to get rid of was the mortal world. Thank you. Bai Yun Hongxian heaved a sigh of relief. She had thought that young Master Su was indifferent and would say something unpleasant. She didn't expect him to be so considerate. When can we set off? Wait for another month. The Broken Heaven Mountain is at the border of the first peerless family and the second peerless family. It will take the Path Master 20 years to get there, Bai Yun Hongxian said. The first peerless family usually uses the Wanzhong beast. The nearest Wanzhong beast will take another month to reach here. Suyu was slightly surprised. Coincidentally, he had just learned about the Wanzhong beast from the human demon's memory. The Wanzhong beast was a very common space divine beast in the last era. When they usually bred a male and a female at the same time. Between the male and female Wanzhong beasts, no matter how far apart they were, they could sense each other. Moreover, they would try their best to travel through space to reach each other. Using this characteristic, people could fix one of them in a certain place, and the other would go there on its own initiative. People would stay in the body and complete the space travel. In the last era, there were very few transportation portals because they had all been replaced by the Wanzhong beast. Not only was it extremely fast, but it could also be used repeatedly. As expected of a continent-level 7-star civilization, things from the last era still existed. For the remaining month, you can walk around the mansion of the first peerless family. If you need anything, just let me know, Bai Yin Hongxian said. Suyu nodded. Thank you, Miss Hongxian. Under her arrangements, Suyu stayed in a villa not far away. He immediately went into seclusion, tried to condense the domain in preparation for the breakthrough to the Path Master. At the same time, in a room in the mansion of the first peerless family, a figure exuding a vicious aura appeared. He slammed the table angrily. What did you say? The young mistress let a man stay in her boudoir? Yes, Gesgu. The eyes of the vicious figure were bloodshot. Didn't the young mistress say that she wasn't interested in men? Now, how could she let a man she just met stay in her boudoir? I wanted to enter, but she wouldn't let me. Chapter 2174. In the end, you just look down on me, don't you? Gesgu was unusually indignant. The informant kept quiet out of fear, not daring to say a word. This guest Eldagu was an extraordinary young half-step Dowlord. Supposedly, he'd only cultivated for 300 years. He had already completed his Daoification, and there was a high chance that he would become a Daoist lord in his lifetime. The Patriarch felt that he was a talent and recruited him to join the ranks of the foreign officials. However, this Gesgu was not content with his lot. He had always wanted to marry the young lady and inherit the #1 peerless clan. However, the young miss had high standards and did not take it to heart. Now that he suddenly heard that a young lady who was not close to men had brought a man into her room, he was naturally furious. What's his name? Su Rushu. Surnamed Su? Gesgu's eyes were filled with disgust. I hate people with the surname Su the most in my life. Why has he come to our #1 peerless clan? I heard that it's for the sky cleansing dust. Gesgu pondered and said, there is no more heaven's pure dust, and there are many people who need it. They have already personally gone to the broken sky mountain to dig for it. If he wants it, he can only dig for it himself. With this in mind, Gesgu raised his hand and took out a piece of jade. After typing a few words into it, he crushed it. The message in the jade piece turned into a ripple that spread into the distance. You want to obtain the sky pure dust? It's not that easy. A month's time passed in a flash. The progress of Suyu's great path transformation was extremely slow. The first thing he tried was the law of time, but he only completed less than 1/10,000,000th of it. Suyu slowly opened his eyes, and exhaustion flashed across his eyes. It really isn't easy to form a domain, Suyu muttered. In the demonic human's memories, even a genius with excellent comprehension would need at least 100 years to complete the Tao transformation of the nomological laws and form a domain. Moreover, that was only the laws that they cultivated, and they were merely ordinary laws. For someone like Suyu, who cultivated the 8 great laws, it was 100 times more difficult for him to achieve the path transformation. Success was easier said than done. Suyu was not discouraged, even though he had encountered such a huge challenge on his first attempt. The simultaneous Daoification of the 8 great laws was unprecedented. It was destined that it could not be achieved through normal means. After his body transformed into the Tao, he would think of ways to transform the Tao into the nomological laws. Dong dong. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. It was by Yin Hongxian. A month had passed, and she had come to warn Suyu. Mr. Su, the Wanzong show has arrived. Suyu opened the door and said, "All right." Under his lead, they came to a place where space was shattered. It was densely packed like a spiderweb. Moreover, the spatial crack was still expanding. It seemed like something was about to come out. Without a doubt, it was the Wanzong beast. In front of the space, there were already many people waiting to ride the Wanzong beast. They were all branches of the number 1 Peerless clan. The number 1 Peerless family had multiplied until now. How many years had it been since they spread their branches and leaves, giving birth to countless descendants? Within the territory of the number 1 Peerless family, 1% of the population was a branch of the number 1 Peerless family. The number of people could not be said to be small. Seeing the arrival of Bai Yun and Hong Xian, they bowed respectfully. "Greetings, miss." As a branch family, they had a bone-deep reverence for the main family. Bai Yun Hongxian nodded indifferently. After that, he ignored them and explained to Suyu how to ride the Wanzong beast, as well as the things to take note of when breaking the crippled Heaven Mountain. His words were very polite, as if he was talking to an elder. This scene caused many people to be astonished. They didn't understand. Who was Suyu? How could he be treated like this by the miss? Only a few people knew that Suyu had killed the White Bone Pathmaster with a single sword strike. It hadn't been spread, so they didn't know what was going on. The heavenly pure dust is known as the hardest object in the 7 unique civilizations. Ordinary treasures can't break it. Only a special shovel can dig it. As Bai Yun Hongxian spoke, a dark golden shovel appeared in her hand. This dark golden shovel is specially used by me. As compensation, I'll give it to you. So you took it puzzled. They were both mining, so what did it have to do with shovels? However, the people who saw this scene exploded on the spot. Oh my god, the flowing gold shovel is the fairy embryo Taoist artifact that the miss carries with her. It's known as the sharpest shovel. With it in hand, the speed of mining is more than 3 times that of others. But why would the miss give it to this human? Hearing this, Suyu was slightly startled. He looked at Bai Yun Hongxian with gratitude in his eyes. Just as he was about to say something, he heard a cracking sound. The spiderweb-like cracks in space finally shattered, revealing a rather large black giant. At first glance, it looked like a stone. However, upon closer inspection, it was actually a stone with countless space wings. It looked around with its black and white eyes, then shrank back and prepared to leave. "Now," Bai Yin Hongxian said. Suyu tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and immediately jumped onto the Wanzong beast. The rest of the people climbed onto the Wanzong beast one after another and followed it through space. Suyu only felt that everything in front of him was pitch black, and the space around him was changing at an incredible speed. In terms of speed, it was even faster than the Luo Ho that he had ridden on. However, the Wanzong beast could only carry out short-distance space teleportation. It couldn't be like the Luo Ho, which could travel endless distances. Even the previous era, the Wanzong beast could only be used for short-distance teleportation. Half a day later, Suyu suddenly felt that the surrounding atmosphere had changed. There was a holy and peaceful aura in the air. At the same time, the space around him suddenly shattered. They left the space with the Wanzong beast and arrived at a strange place. Here, the sky was broken and the earth was broken. Desolation and desolation were everywhere. The sky was gray, and the sun was covered by endless dust. A sense of desolation welled up in his heart. However, on the contrary, at the end of the world, there was a pure white mountain that emitted a holy and peaceful aura. The mountain looked like an iceberg from afar. It was crystal clear and exceptionally beautiful. Before he got close, Suyu felt that the injuries in his body were showing signs of improvement. The heavenly pure ore. Suyu's eyes were filled with anticipation. This mountain could produce several grains of heavenly pure dust every year. With the flowing gold shovel in his hand, he might be able to dig it up. Before coming, Suyu had already learned about the relevant matters of mining. After jumping off the Wanzong beast, he came to the front of the heavenly pure Oregon. From a distance, the heavenly pure ore did not look big. In fact, in terms of size, it was not much smaller than a 4-star civilization. At the foot of the mountain, there was a rather large town. It was naturally formed by the people who mined here all year round. Not only were there people from the first peerless family, but there were also remnants of the second peerless family secretly operating. They had been defeated by the first peerless family, but they had never intended to give up. There had always been people operating in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to snatch back the Broken Heaven Mountain. Therefore, the first peerless family was always on guard. Chapter 2175. Every one of them was at the level of a pathmaster. There were as many as 10 foreign officials. Those foreign officials weren't ordinary half-step pathmasters either. They were either Taoified physically or Taoified spiritually, and some of them had even condensed domains. It was impossible to take back the number 1 peerless family without putting in some effort. In order to guard against them, all those who entered the heavenly pure mine had to be identified by the foreign officials and strictly obey their orders. Otherwise, they had the right to kill them on the spot. The rules were so strict that the newcomers had no choice but to be obedient. At the entrance of the town, a foreign official in his 30s had set up a table and was sitting casually in front of it, checking the identities of those who entered one by one. The newcomer placed his identity token on the table and spat out a mouthful of wine. The token would react accordingly. If it was a genuine identity token, it would emit a faint blue light in the wine. If it was a fake token, it would emit a red light. So you waited patiently in line. At that moment, a calm-looking, curly-bearded man took out his identity token and placed it on the table. The foreign official glanced at him and asked calmly, "Where are you from?" "Yuqiang Mountain, from Lingnan." The foreign official looked at the 2 words "Black Wolf" on it and spat out a mouthful of wine without saying a word. When the wine was sprinkled on it, the 2 words "Black Wolf" immediately emitted a faint blue light. The token was undoubtedly genuine. The curly-bearded man grabbed the token and walked into the town expressionlessly. Unexpectedly, he had only taken a few steps when the token emitted a conspicuous red light. The curly-bearded man's face stiffened, and he said in surprise, What's going on? My token is genuine." The foreign official smiled insincerely and said, "You don't have to pretend anymore. It's not the first time that the people of the number 2 peerless family stole the token of the number 1 peerless family to bluff their way through. In the past, the elders were busy and had no time to deal with you. But now, we found a new way. As long as you don't have the bloodline of the number 1 peerless family, hold the token that has been sprayed with wine, and it will immediately release a red envelope." Upon hearing that, the curly-bearded man's heart skipped a beat. Without thinking, he took a step forward. His identity was self-evident. He really was from a number 2 peerless family. The foreign official couldn't be bothered to chase after him. He just stared at his back with a cold smile. Bang! Suddenly, a sharp blade ray shot out from the city and split the curly-bearded man in 2 from a great distance away. The bloody mist soared into the sky, covering the broken gray sky with a layer of dazzling red. Next, the guest chamberlain sneered at the crowd. The expressions of some of them changed, and they all found excuses to leave the group. In an instant, no less than 10 people left one after another. The guest chamberlain couldn't be bothered to pursue the matter. There were many similar people in the city. Who would have the time to take them seriously? The next one was Suyu. He frowned slightly and took out his young master dustless token. If what this guest chamberlain said was true, he probably wouldn't be able to pass the test either. After all, he did not possess the bloodline of the number 1 peerless clan. However, after looking at the token, the foreign chamberlain's gaze became unfathomable. After staring at Suyu for a while, he slowly said, "Since it's an identity badge that was personally given to you by the young miss, there's no need to check it. Go in." Only then did Suyu heave a sigh of relief. The foreign chamberlain stared at Suyu's back as he entered, a cold smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He muttered, "If you had stayed in the mansion, no one would have been able to do anything to you. Yet, you had to be so reckless and come to the broken Tiankin Mountain." Shaking his head, he continued with the test as if nothing had happened. After entering the city, Suyu immediately reported to the city master. Just as he had said before, Anyone who wanted to enter the sky, pure mind to mind, had to go through the local guest arrangements. The local city lord was a guest elder. His position was ranked first among the 30 guests of the number 1 peerless clan. He was a being whose body and soul had been transformed. His abilities were no small matter. Among the half-path masters, there should be few who could contend with him. Greetings, guest Lu. Suyu came to the guest mansion and paid his respects. The guest looked to be in her 60s, and she was a woman. Her looks weren't particularly outstanding, and she looked old. The most unique thing about her was that there was a plum blossom mark on the left side of her face. It was bright red, as if it had been drawn with blood. Raise your head. Guest Lu was leisurely embroidering needlework. Hearing that, she looked at Suyu. Suyu was puzzled. He raised his head and found that Guest Lu was looking at him with a strange expression. Her gaze was filled with amazement and a hint of passion. She put down the needlework in her hands, walked over, and looked at Suyu up close. She nodded from time to time and praised. Not bad, not bad. As she spoke, she extended her finger and tapped Suyu's shoulder. Suyu frowned slightly and dodged. He said, Guest Lu, I'm here to mine. Please make the arrangements. What's the hurry? Guest Lu sat down again unhurriedly. She said meaningfully, this mine is divided into those that are easy to mine and those that are difficult to mine and those that are flourishing and dried up. Which part of the sky, pure mine, do you want to mine? The sky pure mine had been excavated by 2 aristocratic families. Part of it had long been emptied and dried up. Naturally, there wouldn't be any sky pure mine left. Suyu said, Of course, I want to mine the flourishing area. He vaguely had a bad feeling about this. The way this woman was looking at him was not normal. But there are so many people mining the sky pure mine. Not everyone can mine that flourishing area, right? Guest Lu looked at Suyu and said meaningfully. Suyu creased his brows and said, Guest Lu, if you have something to say, why don't you say it? Haha, I like straightforward people. Guest Lu said with a smile. I lost my husband a long time ago and am all alone. Every night, I feel lonely and empty. I need someone to accompany me at night to relieve my boredom. I wonder if you are willing. Guest Lu said, If you're willing, I can arrange for you to go to a newly excavated area. That place has the most sky pure mine. Before she finished speaking, Suyu's face turned green. She wanted him to sell his body in exchange for a better mining location. Fine. If the other party was a charming and enchanting beauty, even though he wouldn't agree, he would at least feel better. But to be forced by an old woman who looked like she was in her 60s, this really gave him goosebumps. Guest Lu, please arrange a random mining location for me. I'm not picky, Suyu said hurriedly. If he chose a bad mining location, he could still think of a way to get the sky pure mine. But if he lost his innocence, he would never be able to get it back. Hearing this, Guest Lu's smiling face turned green at once. Her eyes were threatening. I'll give you one last chance. Accompany me for a night, and I'll guarantee that you will get to the best mining location. Chapter 2176. Suyu calmly said, I said I'm not picky about mines. He finally made his stance clear, his expression determined. Lu Qing's eyes flashed with anger. Fine, I'll grant you your wish. Tomorrow, go to the East Mining Area. The East Mining Area had already been mined during the Second Absolute time period. Later, it was mined by the First Absolute family. The heavenly pure, or inside, could be said to have been completely mined, with not even a speck of residue left. Fine. Suyu was expressionless, turning to leave. His reputation was more important than not being able to mine anything. Wait, Lu Qing sneered. Mining is not without requirements. You must hand in 100 pounds of pure heavenly pure, or every day. If you do not meet the requirements, it means you are not serious about mining. At that time, your right to mine will be revoked, and you can scram back to where you came from. She paused, then added, No matter who recommended you, now that you are here, even if you are a dragon, you have to bow down. Objectively speaking, the Broken Sky Mountain was still in the midst of a war. The person in charge of this place had the feeling that a general could not obey the emperor's orders when he was outside. As long as Suyu did not fulfill the requirements and was stripped of his right to mine, Even the golden-eyed Lang Jun would have nothing to say. I think the East mining area is pretty good, Su Yu calmly said. I don't need Lu Qing to worry about me. After saying this, he left with his hands behind his back, leaving Lu Qing in a rage. Bastard, you're really, as Guest Gu said, you're not even a thing. Lu Qing coldly grunted. It is your good fortune that I like you, but you have ruined my heart. I will not forgive you. Don't you like the East mining area? Fine, let's see how you dig. After Su Yu left, he came to a shop in the town. The shop specialized in selling all kinds of information, especially information about mines. It was more detailed. Customer, what do you need? The shopkeeper was a beautiful woman in palace attire, her smile revealing her pearly white teeth. She had a shrewd look on her face. Su Yu said, information about mines. The beautiful woman looked Su Yu up and down, then said with a smile, Then, may I ask which mine you are in charge of? East Mine. The beautiful woman's expression changed unnaturally when she heard this, and she said, Eastern or mine? But the mines there have already been dug clean, so why would honored guest Lu still assign people there? Su Yu calmly looked at him and said, Are you trying to sell something, or are you trying to get to the bottom of it? The beautiful woman immediately apologized. I'm sorry. What I meant was that you should ask guest Venerable Lu to change to another area. There really are no ores to dig there. She shook her head regretfully and said, The information on the East or mine is from 2 months ago. Are you sure you still need it? Hand it over. Therefore, the beautiful woman had no choice but to sell the relevant information to him at the price of 100,000 Dao coins. Looking at Su Yu leave with the documents in his hands, the beautiful woman in the palace dress frowned slightly. Why would guest Lu arrange for someone to go to the abandoned East Mine? Have the clan elders and guest elders in the town noticed anything? The next morning, Su Yu arrived at the entrance of the mine. The entire mine was sealed off by the formation that the Dao masters had set up together. The huge formation only left a passageway at the entrance of the mine for people to enter and exit. There were 10 guest elders and 1 clan elder overseeing the place. One of the guest elders held a scroll in his hand. On it were the names of the people who had come to dig, as well as the area they were heading to. Su Yu waited patiently in line, thinking that he was the only one heading to the East Mine. But one after another, he heard that 3 people were heading to the East Mine. Could it be that they have also offended Foreign Minister Lu, which is why they were sent here? Su Yu was slightly surprised. Su Yu East Mine. The guest elder muttered indifferently. Su Yu came back to his senses and immediately walked forward, stepping into the formation. At once, the power of space transportation sent Su Yu directly to the East Mine. Looking around, the East Mine had been dug out until it was completely empty. Even the ground had been dug out hundreds of feet deep. There was no pure sky or left to dig. Su Yu held the flowing gold shovel and sighed helplessly. I'm afraid I'll have to let down Biyun Hongxian's good intentions. I have nowhere to use this shovel. He glanced at the bottomless pits all around him. Su Yu tapped the 9 jade spiritual pearl with his finger, and Xiao Dai suddenly appeared. She was holding a writing brush in her hand, concentrating on practicing her calligraphy. She was displeased to be called out so abruptly. Annoying mortal. Hey, what is this place? As she spoke, she suddenly sensed something and immediately looked around. Her crystal eyes flickered with surprise and desire. Su Yu took in her expression and said, I brought you to a good place to hunt for treasures. Specially? Do you think I'll believe you? Xiao Dai looked as if she had seen through him. Su Yu shrugged and said, I'll just send you back. Xiao Dai snorted bashfully. I'm already here. As she spoke, she gently sniffed and jumped into a very ordinary pit. This pit had been dug out, so it would be difficult to find pure sky or inside. But Xiao Dai's gaze was fixed in one direction, and she punched it. Crack! The wall of the pit was punched, creating a 10-foot-long hole. Deep within the hole, a faint, pure, and holy light filled the air. Su Yu moved closer to take a look and was slightly surprised. There was a fist-sized pure sky, or inside, weighing about 2 to 3 pounds. But would a mere pure sky or pique Xiao Dai's interest? Obviously not. Sure enough, Xiao Dai did not even look at the pure sky Oregon. The virtual image of a giant nine-colored butterfly appeared behind her. The butterfly's wings flapped, and the whole pit rumbled. The 100-foot-tall wall was completely shattered. Pieces of pure sky, or that had not been dug out, fell out one after another. Suyu waved his palm and used space energy to take out all the ore. Suddenly, he had 70 to 80 pounds of it. It wouldn't be long before he reached the 100-pound task. However, with the collapse of the wall, a hidden passageway was suddenly revealed. The passageway had not been artificially opened, but had appeared a long time ago. Judging from the traces of excavation, it had been here for a long time. Xiao Dai quickly walked inside, looking very expectant. There was good stuff inside. Suyu immediately followed her inside. As they went deeper, more and more pure sky ore appeared along the way. In the end, the whole cave was filled with pure sky ore. Suyu casually collected some, and there were hundreds of thousands of pounds of it. When they reached the end of the cave, there was a huge natural pure sky ore again. Its entire body was crystal clear, like a piece of colored glass. Through the pure sky, or they could see the other side. When they fixed their eyes on it, it turned out to be an extremely spacious man-made tomb chamber. Everything in the chamber was made of pure sky ore again. One could even see the graceful figure in the coffin through the tomb chamber. What moved Suyu even more was that the forehead of the figure in the coffin was emitting a dazzling white light, like the sun. Pure sky dust, Suyu said to himself. But before Suyu and the others could do anything, there was a sudden movement in the tomb chamber. From another angle, 3 people suddenly walked out. Those 3 people were the same people who had been sent to the East mining area. Chapter 2177. It's them. Suyu was secretly surprised. He had been able to find this place because of Xiao Dai, who was naturally sensitive to treasures. But those 3 people couldn't possibly have Xiao Dai, could they? We'll continue today. If we persist for another half a month, we'll be able to open this sky pure coffin. Among the 3, there was a woman. At first glance, Suyu found her familiar, as if he had seen her somewhere before. But he wasn't sure. Of the other 2, one was a hale and hearty old man, and the other was a young man. The hale and hearty old man looked at the sky pure or coffin with a look of deep anticipation. Fortunately, the people from the first peerless family did not discover the existence of the tomb chamber inside this mine. From their tone, they were not from the first peerless family. They were probably from the second peerless family. They might have discovered the existence of this tomb chamber when they were excavating it previously. But they had kept the news a secret, so the first peerless family still did not know of the existence of this tomb chamber. At that moment, the young man said, "I heard from Sister Fan that guest Lu sent a young man here. Could it be that our little tricks over the years have been discovered?" Hearing that, the faces of the 2 people tightened slightly, and they could not help but worry. It's hard to say. The hale and hearty old man looked worried. This person's arrangement was too sudden, right before we were about to open the coffin. It's too much of a coincidence. The woman did not think so. She said, "I think there's no need to worry too much. We all know what kind of person guest Lu is. And my sister said that the young man who was sent here is extraordinarily handsome." The woman smiled faintly. "I think guest Lu probably failed to obtain her, so he was punished to come to the East mining area." Hearing that, the other 2 people heaved a sigh of relief and said, "I hope so." In front of the crystal mine, Xiao Dai turned her head and looked Suyu up and down suspiciously. She wanted to laugh, but had to pretend to be noble and reserved. "Don't think too much. I will definitely not lose my chastity to her." The blue veins on Suyu's forehead throbbed. Puffed. Xiao Dai finally could not help but burst out laughing. Fortunately, the sky pure or had a strong isolation effect. Otherwise, those people would have noticed. To think that you would have such a day. Xiao Dai was gloating over Suyu's misfortune. There weren't many people who could defeat Suyu. Suyu was speechless. He glared at her and said, "Be serious. Do you also feel that the coffin is unusual?" Xiao Dai shook her head and said, "To be more precise, there is something extraordinary on that corpse. I want to eat it." "Is it that sky-cleansing dust?" Xiao Dai said, "No, that thing should be even more accurate than the sky pure dust." Looking at the 3, Xiao Dai asked, Do you have the confidence to deal with them? It could be seen that she was very anxious and wanted to take action immediately. It won't be difficult to deal with them. However, I don't have much Downlord energy left in me, and the more I use, the less it will be. If there's no need, it's best not to waste it. Xiao Dai thought for a moment and lied down on the crystal mine. She leisurely squinted her eyes and said, "Let's wait for them to leave." The two of them waited patiently. The three of them didn't leave until the mining time was up. Dong, Xiao Dai could not wait to destroy the sky pure and immediately jumped in. Suyu entered immediately and came before the coffin. Previously, when the sky pure was isolated, he could not feel anything. But now, at such a close distance, he could vaguely feel an evil intent that made his heart flutter. Through the sky pure coffin, he could vaguely see a figure with 4 arms and 4 legs. He had never heard of it before. Then I'll get to work. Xiao Dai gritted her teeth, but she was worried about Suyu. She said unnaturally, "Can you turn around and not look?" She seemed to think that gnawing on something was rather unsightly. Suyu rolled his eyes. "I watched you grow up. Do you need to avoid me when you eat?" Hearing that, Xiao Dai frowned. "I don't know why, but I have an urge to get angry." Why did it feel like she had been raised by Suyu like a daughter? "Ha, let's dig." Suyu laughed and began to observe the coffin. He found that outside of the sky pure, there was a layer of strange rippling light. The rippling light kept changing, and it seemed to be an ordinary isolation seal. Suyu pondered for a moment. If it was really an ordinary seal, why would the three of them need to dig for half a year? As he was thinking, Xiao Dai had already begun to chew on it. However, she, who could bite through anything in the past, only managed to make the seal shake. She opened her mouth in surprise and asked, "What's going on?" In shock, she bit down again. All of a sudden, something strange happened. A powerful arc of light shot out from the seal, carrying with it a terrifying destructive power. It was no less powerful than a full-force blow from a Path Master. Xiao Dai was caught off guard and was about to be hit by the arc of light. "Be careful." At the critical moment, Suyu, who was already prepared, immediately took out the 30-foot small world and pulled Xiao Dai into his arms. Bang! Just as Xiao Dai was being pulled over, the arc of light struck. The entire 30-foot small world trembled from the impact. Fortunately, once it entered the small world, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. Phew! Suyu heaved a sigh of relief and put Xiao Dai down. Her face was slightly pale, and there was a lingering fear in her eyes. It had been too dangerous just now. Just a little more, and she would have been reduced to ashes. "Hide behind me. I'll check the seal carefully." Suyu's eyes shone with purple light. "Freeze!" With a command, the entire formation immediately froze in place. Suyu's scalp went numb when he looked at it. It was only then that he saw clearly that it wasn't just one seal, but tens of thousands of seals mixed together. Among them, there were several extremely ancient and powerful seals that were still operating. Xiao Dai could bite through 1 seal, 10 seals, or even 100 seals. However, it would take her a considerable amount of time to bite through 10,000 seals that were combined into one. Moreover, the 3 ancient seals inside were no trivial matter. The 3 ancient seals had been through the vicissitudes of time, and their power had been greatly weakened. They were not even 1/100th of their original power. Even so, once they were touched, they could still explode with a Pathmaster level attack. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the 3 seals were in their original state. Similarly, after countless years, the 10,000 seals still possessed the power of a half-step Pathmaster level. At their peak, they were probably no weaker than a Downlord. Suyu's expression became grave as he stared at the figure in the sky pure coffin. He felt that it was better not to open the sky pure coffin. After the experience of waking up the human demon, Suyu knew that there were many powerful and extraordinary beings hidden in the world before the end of the world. They might be quite evil, so it was best not to touch them. "Xiao Dai, is the thing inside very important to you?" Suyu asked in a serious voice. Xiao Dai thought for a moment, then said, "Yes, it's very important. I think if I eat it, I might evolve again." Evolve again? She had evolved 3 times, hadn't she? If she evolved again, what kind of being would she be? So you please help me. Ever since the last evolution, there's been a vague voice in my head telling me to go back quickly, Xiao Dai said. I didn't want to care about it at first, but I don't know why that voice keeps appearing, so I can't help but care about it. However, there are no hints about where to go back to. I think if I evolve again, I might get the answer. Oh, there was a voice in her head. As a mutated, nine-colored chaos butterfly, her evolution was indeed quite strange. Normal nine-colored chaos butterflies were born in human form, and as they evolved, they eventually became butterflies. Xiao Dai was the opposite. Moreover, why was she in the seed of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo? Where did she come from? Where did the voice in her head lead her back to? Looking at Xiao Dai's distressed expression, Su Yu's heart softened. All right, but you and I shouldn't take any more risks. His eyes shone. Those three can dig the coffin, but they are not affected. Why don't we let them dig it first before we act? Yes, I'll listen to you. Xiao Dai was unusually obedient. Su Yu and Xiao Dai left through the hole. Of course, before leaving, they sealed the sky pure or mine to prevent the three people from noticing. They left the mine and returned to the town. Before walking out the exit, they heard a stern reprimand. You're late. When they opened their eyes, it was Guest Lu. He was sitting on a wooden armchair, collecting the sky pure or mine from the people leaving the mine. When he saw Su Yu, he immediately frowned and scolded him. Su Yu's expression was indifferent. I found some good ores, so I dug for a while longer. What's the matter? Would I be disqualified if I came out a moment later? In the mine, there were countless miners. It would take a while just to queue up and leave. How could everyone leave on time? If he was expelled from the mine because of this reason, the golden-eyed Lang Jun would be dissatisfied. Guest Lu narrowed his eyes. There were not many people who dared to contradict him. Su Yu was one of them. Are you done digging? Guest Lu stared at Su Yu with a cold gaze. The thread in her eyes was thick. She did not believe that Su Yu could really dig 100 ores in the east mining area. The mines there had long been emptied. Even if he could find a few pieces of ores, they would not exceed 5 pounds. 100 pounds of ores, he could forget about it. I'm done. However, Su Yu's reply stunned Guest Lu. She asked, Are you done digging? Su Yu did not say a word. He threw a small bag that was specially used to contain the sky pure or onto the table. The sturdy table was smashed by this throw, and a small hole was formed. Guest Lu was skeptical. When she opened the small bag to take a look, her expression immediately changed. Surprise, suspicion, and deep doubt. How did you get here? Speak. Guest Lu put down the bag and stared at Su Yu, her expression demanding an answer. Su Yu's expression was indifferent. What do you think? Chapter 2178. Steel. Su Yu's eyes glowed coldly. Without another word, he took out 1,000 kilograms of heavenly crystal from his space storage device. The few guests nearby, and even the miners who had yet to leave, were all shocked. 1,000 kilograms? Even in the area with the most mining, no one can mine 1,000 kilograms in a day. That can't be true, right? The eastern mining areas has long been depleted. Even if there was more, there shouldn't be more than 1,000 kilograms. Furthermore, even if there's so much, how did he mine it? With the hardness of the heavenly crystal? Or could a normal person mine more than 1,000 kilograms in a day? Obviously not. Guest Lu was also stunned, his face filled with astonishment. How could there be so much heavenly crystal in the eastern mining area? Now, tell me, who did I steal 1,000 kilograms of heavenly crystal from? No one could mine 1,000 kilograms in a day, much less in the eastern mining area. There were not many people there, and the total amount of ore they dug could not possibly reach 1,000 kilograms. So it could not have been stolen. Guest Lu squinted. Fine, even if you did not steal it, can you explain the source of the heavenly crystal? Su Yu calmly said, Is there a need for me to explain? I don't remember miners having to provide information about their mining process to guest elders. There were always good and bad spots in the mines. It was human nature to hide a good spot and mine it yourself. Thus, there was no rule in the mines that one had to explain the mining process. The task of a guest was to arrange for people to dig at a certain spot, then count the amount of ore that these people dug every day. As for the other matters, they did not interfere. I'm a guest, Guest Lu said seriously. Su Yu's eyes were filled with disdain. Wait until you become the master of a family. As he spoke, he put away the 1,000 kilograms leaving the 100 kilograms behind. If there is no problem with the ore, then I will take my leave. He did not pay any attention to him, swaggering off. The greatest power of a guest was to decide on the location of the mine. Su Yu no longer cared about the mine. Her so-called intimidation was just empty talk. Guest Lu watched as Su Yu left, his eyes gradually turning cold. In the Broken Heaven Mountain, there is no one I cannot deal with. Guest Lu was truly furious. He was no longer just helping Gesku make things difficult for him. He wanted to punish Su Yu himself. Su Yu had no idea about this. However, he was on guard. After returning to his residence, Su Yu quietly rested. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. When he opened the door, he saw a slightly familiar person. Thinking carefully, wasn't it the woman in the palace dress who sold the information? What's the matter? Su Yu had some guesses as to why he had come. The beautiful woman in palace attire smiled lightly. Naturally, I have something good to say. That's why I dare to disturb young Master Wuchen. Tell me about it, Su Yu said. The beautiful woman's eyes gleamed. Young Master Wuchen, are you sure you want to say it here? She looked around and saw that many people in the corridor were staring at them. Su Yu hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside. Come in. After both of them sat down, Su Yu said, let's get straight to the point. I wish to buy the excess sky pure ore in young Master Dustless's hands, said the beautiful woman in palace attire. Su Yu's expression was indifferent. His purpose of coming was just as he had imagined. If this is your only motive, then please leave, Su Yu said calmly. He did not lack Dao coins, so there was no need for him to exchange for the sky pure ore again. The sky pure ore was quite popular in the 7 ultimate civilizations, and it could be used to exchange for many precious things that couldn't be bought with path coins. The beautiful woman in palace attire didn't look disappointed. Instead, she smiled mysteriously. Then, I'll change the deal again. Speak, Su Yu said. The beautiful woman in palace attire said meaningfully, I see that although your cultivation is half a path master, your body hasn't been transformed into the path, right? There was a hint of mystery in her tone, which made people think deeper. Su Yu's eyes flickered slightly. Speak if you have something to say. Hee. As you know, I sell information, so I have a lot of insider information that only a few people know about. The beautiful woman in palace attire stared into Su Yu's eyes and enunciated each word clearly. Recently, I received a piece of important news. Somewhere in the Broken Heaven Mountain, there is a wave of supreme power of heaven and earth that is about to erupt. I don't think I need to explain what the supreme power of heaven and earth is used for, right? Su Yu was tempted. The transformation of the body into the path could only be completed by tempering the supreme power of heaven and earth. However, the supreme power of heaven and earth could only be encountered by chance. Now, there was a place that was about to erupt, which was really a pleasant surprise. Is what you said true? Su Yu asked. The beautiful woman in palace attire said, absolutely true. When the time comes, I'll go there myself. If I don't have it by then, you don't have to give me the heavenly pure ore again. To Su Yu, this wasn't much of a loss. When is the estimated time of the eruption? Su Yu asked. The beautiful woman in palace attire said, according to the information I've gathered, it should be sometime in half a month. Half a month? The heavenly pure ore coffin had just opened, so the timing was just right. All right, how much heavenly pure ore do you plan to collect? 100,000 caddies. Su Yu frowned deeply. Are you kidding me? Where can I conjure 100,000 caddies of heavenly pure ore? I could give you 1,000 caddies at most. He didn't really care about 100,000 caddies of heavenly pure ore again, considering the size of the ancient tomb. The amount of heavenly pure ore in it was more than 1,000,000 caddies. However, if he revealed that he had 100,000 caddies of heavenly pure ore, wouldn't it arouse suspicion? Hee. Your Excellency, you must be joking. An opportunity to transform one's body in a Tao is extremely rare, and many half-step Tao Lords don't even get the chance to transform their bodies into Tao. So, How could its value be limited to just 1,000 caddies? The beautiful woman in palace attire shook her head. I'll give you a number. 50,000 caddies. 1,000 caddies. 50,000 caddies. 1,000 caddies. The beautiful woman in palace attire stood up and sighed. If your excellency isn't sincere, then forget it. So you replied calmly, then please go ahead. I believe that apart from me, no one in this mine can give you an extra 1,000 caddies of heavenly pure Oregon. He was speaking the truth. After all, if others could guarantee that they would get good missions every day, why would they want an extra one? The beautiful woman in palace attire stopped in her tracks and turned to look at Suyu. She was slightly discouraged as she said, 2,000 caddies, 1,000 caddies. If you don't want it, then forget it. The beautiful woman in palace attire glared at him angrily. You really have a heart of stone. I can't believe you won't give me an extra caddy. Suyu just shrugged his shoulders and didn't say anything. The beautiful woman in palace attire said helplessly, fine, 1,000 caddies it is. I'll contact you when the time comes. After exchanging communication magical artifacts, they bid farewell to each other. Suyu looked at the beautiful woman's departing back and muttered to himself thoughtfully, why did the world's most powerful force just happen to appear in the Broken Heaven Mountain? She probably didn't just sell this information to me, did she? After sending her off, Suyu was just about to close his eyes and meditate. All of a sudden, someone knocked on his door. Chapter 2179. He was in his early 30s, handsome and elegant, and had a gentle and refined temperament. But Suyu did not realize that when Byun Hongxian had given him the flowing gold shovel, he had attracted suspicious looks. At that moment, he was beaming with joy and was extremely polite. He cupped his fists and said, Congratulations, Mr. Wuchen. You were able to excavate such a large sky, clean mine in a wasteland. Suyu's expression was calm as he said, I was just lucky. Who are you? Oh, I haven't introduced myself. I am Tian Yunzhong, also from the number 1 peerless family, Wanzhongshou. We met once before. He introduced himself. Suyu nodded slightly and said, I see. Your Excellency, why have you come here? Do you have any advice for me? Haha, the mine I excavated almost failed to complete today's task. How could I have the face to teach, Mr. Wuchen? Tian Yunzhong laughed self-mockingly. Suyu's expression was calm. Then why are you here today? Tian Yunzhong chuckled and said, I'm here to ask for some mining experience, brother. Hearing that, Suyu said without hesitation, I said I was just lucky. I don't have much experience. But Tian Yunzhong did not seem to hear the distancing in Suyu's words. He said, You must be joking. If you don't have experience, who else in the mine would? Moreover, I know that Mr. Wuchen needs the sky clean dust. I happen to know some news about it. Perhaps we can talk about it. News about the sky clean dust? Had a new one appeared somewhere in the mine? Please come in. Suyu invited him in. The two of them soon began chatting. Suyu was a little surprised. Tian Yunzhong had said that he was here to ask for some mining experience, but his words did not sound very enthusiastic. He was always rambling, only occasionally asking a question. Moreover, he was also hesitant about the news about the sky clean dust. He only said half of it. Suyu felt that he was trying to find something to talk about. Are you stalling for time? After chatting for 2 hours, Suyu interrupted Yunzhong, who was still trying to change the topic and bring up some meaningless topics. His gaze was ice cold. He was sure that Tian Yunzhong had come with an ulterior motive. Combined with his fear of foreign elder Lu during the day, Suyu felt that there was an 80 to 90% chance that Tian Yunzhong had come under orders to buy time. Indeed, Tian Yunzhong was caught off guard. His true intentions were exposed. His eyes flickered slightly, and he quickly said, Brother Wuchen, what are you saying? Although he hit it very well, Suyu still managed to capture the slight flicker. He narrowed his eyes and said faintly, It's getting late. Please return. However, Tian Yunzhong smiled and said, My apologies, my apologies. Perhaps I have gone off topic. Let's continue chatting about Jingchun. I'm tired. I want to rest. Let's talk next time. Tian Yunzhong said stubbornly, There might not be a chance next time. Suyu's gaze turned cold. He had repeatedly asked the guest to leave, but the guest had refused to leave. At this point, was there still a need to doubt his motives? He was definitely trying to stall for time. I will say this one last time. Leave my place, the further the better. Suyu's eyes shone with a cold light. Feeling the murderous intent that Suyu was gradually releasing, Tian Yunzhong's smile disappeared. He also released his cultivation level. His previously amiable face was suddenly filled with displeasure. Humph! I came here with good intentions to chat with you. And this is how you treat me? Chat? Ha! Suyu laughed coldly, striking out with his palm. He had already struck out, but Tian Yunzhong still had no intention of leaving. He struck back with his palm. His intentions had been completely exposed. He wanted to stay in Suyu's room. No matter what his motives were, Suyu could not let him stay. Wuchen, is this how you treat people with good intentions? You really don't know how to behave. Tian Yunzhong snorted. Suyu's eyes narrowed. He had always been disdainful of people who lied through their teeth. The aura around his body became fierce. Since you don't want to leave, then you don't have to, Suyu said nonchalantly. He had secretly released his heavenly eyes to survey the situation in all directions. As expected, he saw Foreign Minister Liu and a few other foreign ministers rushing toward the inn he was in. Since Tian Yunzhong wanted to harm him so badly, Suyu had no reason to be polite. Haha, I want to stay. What do you do to me? Tian Yunzhong said disdainfully. You are just a piece of trash who gained the lady's favor by sucking up to her. He had finally spoken his mind. Suyu smiled indifferently. Sucking up to him? He really didn't know who had sucked up to whom between him and Yunhongxian. I have no intention of chasing you away. Just as I said, you don't have to leave. Suyu's eyes turned cold, and he activated time and space freeze. Freeze! Tian Yunzhong's face still had a look of disdain, but his body and soul were frozen. Suyu extracted his soul and kept it in the space vortex. He then used the law of death to corrode his body and turn it into ashes. At the same time, he used his life force to erase all the auras in the nearby clouds. Just as he was done, a huge commotion broke out outside the inn. Several powerful auras enveloped the inn, and a spell was cast to seal off the entire inn, preventing anyone from entering or leaving. There are remnants of the second peerless family here. Everyone, stay in the house and don't come out. Guest Liu raised his voice so that the whole town could hear him. Not only did the people in the inn hear him, but the rest of the people were also alarmed and rushed over. Everyone was shocked. What level of remnants are they? Are they worth sending 5 guests to deal with? Even stranger, how did the guests know that there were remnants here? Honored guest Liu said in a loud voice. Our people have been lurking in the inn and have discovered some suspicious objects and suspicious people. We are now under orders to arrest them. As she spoke, she and the other guests swooped down, smashing the roof of the house that Suyu was in, and leaped inside. How dare you? Hurry up and surrender. Guest Liu didn't even get a clear look at the situation at the scene before he roared. So much so that when she realized that Suyu was the only one in the house, she was shocked. Where was Tian Yunzhong? According to the plan, when they jumped in, Tian Yunzhong would throw the loot that he had prepared in the corner of the house. Then, they would capture Suyu together with the loot and capture him. But now, Tian Yunzhong was nowhere to be seen. Suyu was the only one who was calmly leaning against the stone bed, calmly staring at her. Remnant evil? Who are you talking about? The other 4 foreign chamberlains looked suspicious and asked Foreign Chamberlain Liu, Is your information accurate? Didn't you say that there are remnants here? Are you referring to Mr. Wuchen? But you need evidence, right? Guest Liu's face turned green and purple. She scanned the surroundings unwillingly, hoping to find some clues. But, unfortunately, the house was very clean, and there was no so-called loot. Where is he? Guest Liu stared at Suyu's face, but as soon as the words left her mouth, she realized that she should not have asked. Chapter 2180. Suyu squinted his eyes. Her question was enough to prove that this matter was indeed planned by Guest Liu. That Yin Tianzhong was merely a pawn. Who are you talking about? Suyu calmly asked. Guest Liu knew that she had already been exposed, so there was no need to deliberately hide. Stop playing dumb. Where is Yin Tianzhong? He sent a message saying that there is something suspicious in your house. Suyu shrugged. Yin Tianzhong? Who? Humph. Don't pretend to be ignorant here. A trace of hostility appeared on Guest Lu's face. Suyu's eyes shone with a cold light. You need evidence for everything. Not only did you accuse me of being a descendant of the second peerless family, but you also want me to hand over someone I don't know. Even a family master wouldn't be as arrogant as you, right? Or do you really think that the mine is yours, that you can do whatever you want? If that is the case, I will leave the mine now and report everything that happened today to the master of the family. Hearing her threatening words, the other guests slightly creased their brows. Guest Lu's way of doing things was indeed filled with too many personal emotions and subjective opinions. If this matter were to reach the ears of the master, it would not be good. They were about to persuade Guest Lu, but she stubbornly said, "Who do you think you are to have the right to see the master of the family? If you do not hand over the person today, don't even think about." She did not continue speaking, but stared unblinkingly at the thing in Suyu's hands, her expression constantly changing. A golden shovel was swaying in Suyu's hands. The few guests saw it, and their expressions changed. Flowing gold shovel? In the entire First Peerless family, there was only one flowing gold shovel, and it was in the hands of the mistress. How could it appear in Suyu's hands? At the same time, Suyu held a video recording Jade Charm in his palm, recording everything that had happened. I may not have the right to see the master of the family, but I can still see the mistress, Suyu calmly said. Continue. Guest Lu secretly clenched her teeth, her heart burning with anger. Holding the flowing gold shovel was enough to show that the mistress had a deep relationship with him. What was so difficult about giving this recording to the golden pupil? Let's go. Guest Lu said hatefully. She had actually suffered a loss at the hands of a junior. This debt absolutely couldn't be let go of so easily. The few guests left. After a long time, when Suyu was sure that they would not return, he sat down cross-legged and entered the soul dimension. The soul in the clouds was curled up in a corner, not moving at all. It seems like I don't need to explain your current situation. Suyu's eyes shone with a cold starlight. Yin Tianzhong was terrified and remorseful. He knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Please let me go. I was forced. Forced? Judging from his behavior, it didn't seem like he was forced by anyone at all. Suyu's gaze was indifferent. Tell me, what did Guest Lu instruct you to do? This old woman had dealt with him again and again. If he let it go just like that, it would be really hard for him to feel good. Tian Yunzhong said everything he knew. I was forced by her to frame you as a remnant of the Second Supreme Clan. Tell me the details. To be more specific, they want me to go to your residence right now. Then, when they come, they will immediately throw down an item that only belongs to a young master of the Second Peerless family, and thus frame you. Suyu's eyes shone brightly. What is it? Take it out. Tian Yunzhong nodded and spat out a storage ring from his soul. The starlight flickered, and an oddly shaped, earthy yellow dagger appeared in his palm. The dagger didn't have a strong spiritual pressure, and it didn't look like a treasure. Suyu's eyes shone as he weighed the dagger. Do you want to live, or do you want to die? I want to live. Please give me a way out. Suyu said calmly. If you want to live, it's very simple. Help me do something. Please tell me. I will definitely help you. Tian Yunzhong saw a glimmer of hope, so he naturally spared no effort in seeking survival. Suyu said calmly, help me pay back a tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. Tian Yunzhong immediately understood what Suyu meant and said, Want me to frame Guest Lu? Are you not willing to? Tian Yunzhong felt bitter. Was it so easy to frame a Guest Lu? How big of a deal would it be for a Guest Lu to be suspected? At that time, the other guests and even the elders would be alerted. His plan of framing Guest Lu would be easily seen through, and he would be in trouble. Moreover, even if the framing was successful, the Guest Lu might not die so quickly. If she didn't die, she would bear a grudge against him. No matter how he looked at it, it was a dead end. But if he didn't agree, he would die right now. I'm willing. I'm very willing. Tian Yunzhong said immediately. Suyu nodded, bringing his soul out of the soul dimension. At the same time, he used his aura to recreate Tian Yunjong's body. Tian Yunjong was shocked by Su Yu's nature-defying methods, staring at his own body in disbelief. Just as he was about to lose control of his soul, he felt a sharp pain in his soul. It was Su Yu. He had placed a finger on the space between his brows, imbuing it with a seal. Don't try to break free of the seal. You will only die faster if you do. Tian Yunjong nodded repeatedly, saying, "Please watch my performance next." After informing him of the detailed plan, Tian Yunjong left immediately. Guest Lu returned to his lodging, becoming more and more furious the more she thought about it. "Little Wuchen, how dare you humiliate me like this? I will not forgive you." Guest Lu clenched her fists. The fury in her heart came without rhyme or reason. It was clear that she had failed to bully Su Yu, but in her perception, it was she who had been humiliated. Her eyes glowed as she thought about how to proceed. Since she had failed to frame Su Yu, the other party would definitely be on guard if she tried to use other schemes. She had no choice but to use some forceful methods. Just as she was thinking, an aura suddenly descended without warning. The person who had arrived was one of the few guest companions who had just left. He had a close relationship with her, and it could be considered friendship. Honored guest Li, is something the matter? Honored guest Lu saw his old friend's mysterious look and knew that something must have happened. Thus he asked. Guest Li looked left and right, lowering his voice. "Someone reported you to the clan elder, saying that you were suspected of colluding with the remnants of the second peerless family. When I received the news, I informed you immediately. Later, the clan elder will definitely summon you for a confrontation. Be careful." Guest Lu was stunned, muttering, "Who would dare report me? On the surface of the heaven-breaking, crippled mountain, who would have the guts to report her? Apart from Mr. Wuchen, there was no one else, right?" "Mr. Wuchen?" Guest Lu was furious, as if she had been greatly wronged. Guest Li was stunned. "The person who reported you was not Mr. Wuchen, but Tian Yunjong." "What?" Honored Guest Lu was shocked. She had asked Tian Yunjong to frame Su Yu, but he had disappeared. It turned out that he had gone to report her. Her heart was boiling with anger, feeling that she had been greatly betrayed. "I don't think anyone believes his words, right?" Guest Lu's face sank. Guest Li hesitated for a moment, saying, the situation may not be optimistic. He claimed to have a dagger that you gave him, and he also said that you might have been bribed by the second peerless family to become a spy. He has other evidence. This matter has alarmed the 3 clan elders and all the guests. Now, we're just waiting for the clan elders to appear and question you in public. How dare he slander me?" Guest Lu clenched her fists. She had nothing to say about the dagger. She had snatched it from a young master of the second peerless family when they were fighting for the heaven-breaking, crippled mountain. She had not handed it over. Chapter 2181. Be careful, Guest Li reminded. Even if the other party does not have real evidence, he would not dare to say such things without thinking. Guest Lu clenched his teeth. Is he already in front of the clan elders? Not yet. He is still in the station, waiting to be summoned by the clan elders. Ungrateful thing. I want to ask him what exactly is going on. Guest Li nodded. Yes, before the official confrontation, you can have a private discussion. But remember, do not do anything extreme. I understand. After Guest Li left sneakily, Guest Lu immediately went to the station. Unbeknownst to him, Guest Li had suddenly returned. Looking at Guest Lu's back, he let out a faint smile. A faint ripple appeared on the surface of his body. When the ripple dissipated, his face turned into Su Yu's. At the same time, inside the station, a few guests gathered in the hall, exchanging opinions. What do you think of Tian Yunjong's accusation? Half true, half false. One of the guests had a shrewd look. How long has Guest Lu been in the number 1 peerless family? If he was a spy from the number 2 peerless family, he would have been exposed long ago. Indeed, in the battle a few years ago, he killed many people from the number 2 peerless family. It is too unrealistic to say that he is a spy. I think Tian Yunjong is most likely making a false accusation. Later, the clan elders will definitely search his soul. This matter concerns the guests. They cannot easily believe one side of the story. Everyone thought so. At that moment, Guest Lu arrived at the station, but he did not see the other guests. Instead, he swept his gaze over them and came to a side hall in the station. Inside the hall, Tian Yunzhong paced nervously with his hands clasped behind his back, showing his anxiety. He was about to confront Guest Lu in court. How could he not be nervous? With a clang, the door of the hall was kicked open. He turned to look, and a figure that made his heart tremble appeared in front of him. Lu. Guest Lu? The person he was most unwilling to see at that moment was Guest Lu. Furthermore, it was before the confrontation. Out of guilt, he shrank back. Guest Lu, what? What are you doing here? Guest Lu closed the door, his gaze deep. What do you think? Her trembling voice indicated the extreme anger in her heart. Tian Yunzhong was afraid, but he remembered Su Yu's instructions. He clenched his teeth and said righteously, Guest Lu, you'd better repent and confess your actions to the clan elders. Don't make any more mistakes. Hearing this, Foreign Minister Lu's eyes became even deeper. What did I do wrong? Why don't you teach me? Tian Yunzhong said sternly. Naturally, it's about you colluding with the number 2 peerless family. In this matter, I've already obtained evidence. Later, I will report it to the clan elder. If you take the initiative to confess, perhaps the clan elder will spare your life. If you are stubborn, no one can save you. He had a confident look on his face. Foreign Minister Lu laughed angrily. I colluded with the 2nd peerless clan? Ridiculous. Tian Yunzhong shook his head and said coolly, It's not funny. Honored Guest Lu, don't make any more mistakes. You have nowhere else to go. His words really made Foreign Minister Lu tremble with anger. He kept telling her not to make any more mistakes, but there was no evidence at all. Tell me clearly, what exactly happened to you? Foreign Minister Lu sucked in the air and sucked Tian Yunzhong close to him. His body had already transformed, and Tian Yunzhong couldn't resist him at all. Speak. Was it that Wuchen who ordered you to do this? Guest Elder Lu grabbed his throat and interrogated. Tian Yunzhong said with difficulty, No, it's not like that. You still say it's not. Foreign Minister Lu rebuked him angrily. Unexpectedly, Tian Yunzhong's eyes suddenly darkened. His soul actually collapsed, and even his body suddenly exploded. The huge shock wave blew the entire side hall into pieces. Foreign Minister Lu had a Taoist body, so he didn't suffer any injuries. However, he was very shocked. How could Tian Yunzhong's body and soul suddenly die? Swish, swish, swish. How could the strange movement here be hidden from the foreign ministers nearby? They all rushed over and felt the flattened side hall, as well as Tian Yunzhong's shattered body and bones. Foreign Minister Lu still maintained the posture of grabbing Tian Yunzhong's throat. Foreign Minister Lu, you killed him? The foreign minister who rushed over stared at the scene in front of him in disbelief. When did she come? Why did she want to kill Tian Yunzhong? Could it be Tian Yunzhong's accusation was true, and she wanted to silence him? The way many foreign ministers looked at Foreign Minister Lu changed. Originally, they didn't believe Tian Yunzhong's accusation. But now that Foreign Minister Lu had publicly silenced him, what Tian Yunzhong said might be true. Finally, Foreign Minister Lu felt that something was wrong. He hurriedly explained, I didn't do it. However, none of the foreign ministers spoke. They all stared at her with a suspicious look. If you didn't do it, then who did it? Did he commit suicide because he couldn't get over it? No matter how she explained, why did she secretly appear in the side hall? And why did she maintain the posture of killing Tian Yunzhong? She couldn't clear her name. Listen to my explanation. Foreign Minister Lu finally realized that he had fallen into a trap. Su Yu's real intention wasn't to frame Tian Yunzhong. Instead, he was using his death to make Foreign Minister Lu unable to clear his name. From the beginning, it had been a series of traps. Humph! Suddenly, a cold snort exploded. Foreign Minister Lu grunted. Blood immediately flowed from the corner of his mouth. His face was filled with pain and fear. The Pathmaster had arrived. Even though he hadn't arrived, his thoughts had. Pathmaster Feng Hua, I'm innocent. Please believe me. Foreign Minister Lu said hurriedly. If you don't believe me, you can search my soul. I really didn't collude with the 2nd peerless family. The formless path master said indifferently. You are already a person in the process of soul transformation. You have the ability to change the memories of your soul. What's the use of searching your soul? I. Foreign Minister Liu was at a loss for words. The only witness has already been silenced by you. Now, there is no evidence to prove that you colluded with the second peerless family. However, in view of your suspicions, you are now officially stripped of all your positions. You will be locked up in the dungeon and wait for our investigation until we get the results. At that moment, Foreign Minister Liu's face turned pale. Stripped of her position as a foreign minister, she would have nothing. Moreover, even if the investigation was done in the future, would she still be valued? She was already a suspect. The first peerless family might not be willing to reappoint her as a foreign minister. Her career as a foreign minister had come to an end. Go to the dungeon yourself. Don't make me do it. After the Pathmaster finished speaking, her voice faded away completely. Foreign Minister Liu clenched her fists and went to the dungeon alone in grief and indignation, under the suspicious gazes of her former colleagues. She was the only one who knew that it was all Mr. Wuchen's scheme. At that moment, she hated Su Yu to the core. Wait for me to come out. I will take your life, she said bitterly in her heart. On the other side, in a certain room, Su Yu used resurrection to resurrect Tian Yunzhong, who had just died not long ago. He was a man of his word. Since he had promised to spare Tian Yunzhong's life, he would not go back on his word. Of course, it was not appropriate for Tian Yunzhong to show his face now. Hence, he kept him in the space of the Buddha Pearl. Just locking him up? The result is just as I expected, Su Yu muttered to himself. It was impossible for the clan elders to put foreign elder Liu to death without any evidence. It seems like I have to work harder. Chapter 2182. He sat cross-legged, and a heavenly eye appeared in the sky above the city. His eyes were pale, and he could see through everything in the city, including the dungeon. Under his gaze, guest elder Liu was in a cell. She stood in the shadows in the corner, her whole person gloomy, like a malicious ghost. Then, the giant heavenly eye suddenly shot out a beam of wine-red light. It flashed and instantly brought guest Liu out of the cell. Then, she appeared in Su Yu's room. Guest Liu was stunned. Before she could figure out what was going on, she heard an unforgettable voice. We meet again, Guest Liu. Looking for the source of the voice, Guest Liu's eyes were about to crack. Wuchen, it's you. She was about to fly into a rage when she suddenly realized something was wrong. Wait, why did you let me out? After being schemed against once, she immediately became vigilant and said in a solemn voice, You want to accuse me of breaking out of prison so that I can be executed, right? Seeing Su Yu's indifferent expression, Guest Liu was sure of her guess. She was furious. Shameless brat. Su Yu laughed lightly. Shameless? This word, coming from your mouth, really has a special flavor. Guest Liu grunted coldly. She knew that she had to return to the dungeon as soon as possible. She could not stay outside for long. Otherwise, the crime of prison breaking would be confirmed. She turned to leave the room, but how could Su Yu let her go? Space barrier. He used the space law to seal off the entire room. You think you can stop me? Honored guest Liu slapped out with a single palm, and his tyrannical Downlord body directly shattered a layer of spatial barrier. But after one was shattered, tens of thousands of space barriers appeared one after another. Guest Liu's expression changed slightly. She turned to stare at Su Yu, her face contorted. You are looking for death. Su Yu laughed. You say it as if you have good intentions toward me. Guest Liu was anxious. She had no time to explain to Su Yu, attacking the barriers continuously. Again and again, she finally managed to shatter the tens of thousands of barriers. Su Yu casually used the space law to create tens of thousands of space barriers. I will not forgive you. Guest Liu was mad with anger. Guest Liu, who was already extremely furious, was provoked by Su Yu again and again. Finally, he could not take it anymore and turned around to attack Su Yu. Wouldn't it be extremely easy for him to annihilate a half-step Downlord who didn't possess any Dao transformation at all? Su Yu chuckled and set up tens of thousands of space barriers in front of him. No matter how honored guest Lu rushed over, he could not immediately break through it. At the same time, every shattering of a spatial barrier would cause a huge commotion. The city wasn't huge to begin with, so how could such a commotion not attract attention? In the darkness, several piercing gazes suddenly shot over. Suyu's heart moved. He immediately withdrew all the space barriers and took the initiative to receive the remnant waves of guest Lu's attack. Puff! He was severely injured and spat out a mouthful of blood. Guest Lu was already filled with murderous intent. He charged forward and pressed his palm towards Suyu's head, wanting to kill him on the spot. Suyu's face was filled with fear. He took out the flowing gold shovel and said, "You can't kill me. I'm with the young mistress. Who cares who you are? Die for me." Foreign Chamberlain Lu's features were ferocious. He roared in a low voice and charged over. At that moment, a heavy, cold snort was suddenly heard. Foreign Chamberlain Lu felt as if she had been struck by a bolt of lightning. She was thrown hundreds of feet away on the spot. Her whole body was covered in cracks, a sign that her Taoist body was injured. She was about to get up when three imposing figures descended all of a sudden. They struck at the same time and pinned Foreign Chamberlain Lu to the ground. The three figures were surrounded by domains and looked extremely mysterious. They were naturally the three clan elders who were guarding this place. Stubborn fool. One of the three clan elders, a female pathmaster, coldly snorted. "I gave you a chance to turn over a new leaf, but you actually broke out of prison to take revenge and kill someone." Foreign Chamberlain Lu was pinned down by the three pathmasters. She had a sudden realization and completely calmed down. She hurriedly said, "Please listen to my explanation. I was framed." "Framed? Huh." The Fenghua sect master was furious. "He framed you and made you break out of prison. He framed you and made you come here to take revenge and kill someone? That was the truth. But who would believe it? A foreign chamberlain with a Taoist body was rescued by an ordinary half-step pathmaster from a tightly guarded dungeon? Not only did he rescue her, but he also made her kill him? The other two pathmasters were filled with disappointment. "You unrepentant thing. Originally, the three of us still had a sliver of trust in you. We wanted to wait for the results of the investigation before asking the family master to appoint you as a foreign chamberlain again. Now it seems like that's not necessary." The other clan elder looked at Suyu and asked, "Why did she break out of prison to kill you?" Suyu covered his wound and said in a low voice, "Before Tian Yunzhong reported me, he had a secret conversation with me. He told me that if he encountered misfortune one day, I should ask him to take care of his family. I think foreign Chamberlain Lu must have misunderstood. Tian Yunzhong told me where the evidence was hidden, so he wanted to silence me by killing me." Hearing that, the expressions of the three pathmasters did not change, but they had already made up their minds. Apart from that, what other reason could make foreign Chamberlain Lu break out of prison and kill someone? Now, even she herself would not believe that she had not colluded with the second most powerful family. "I'm innocent. Everything was a trap set up by him. You have to believe me, really." Foreign Chamberlain Lu pleaded tearfully. "Slap." The Fenghua sect master slapped her across the face and scolded angrily. "Shut up. What a disgrace." Not only had she tried to silence him once, she had done it a second time. Now that she was caught in the act, she still wanted to quibble. Was she insulting the intelligence of the three clan elders? This person is definitely a spy from the second most powerful family. How should we deal with him? The Fenghua sect master asked coldly. The other two clan elders exchanged glances and saw the ruthlessness in each other's eyes. There had always been only one way to deal with the remnants of the second most powerful family. Death. "No, I didn't. I'm really innocent." Foreign Chamberlain Lu fell into a great panic, kowtowing repeatedly. "As long as you spare my life, I'm willing to do anything." However, the three clan elders had already made up their minds. Foreign Chamberlain Lu was too savage. Not only did she publicly silence him, she even dared to break out of prison and silence him a second time. Considering her usual behavior, people like her must not be allowed to live. The Fenghua sect master said coldly. Everything comes with a price, and you are no exception. With that, she was about to end foreign Chamberlain Lu's life with a finger. At the moment of life and death, foreign Chamberlain Lu clenched her teeth and took out a golden token. Her whole body emitted bursts of golden light. On it were the two words death exemption. The words were bold and powerful, emitting a unique rhythm. I have the death exemption token personally bestowed by the family head. You can't kill me, foreign Chamberlain Lu said painfully. The three clan elders' expressions changed slightly. The Fenghua sect master took the death exemption token and looked at it. She said in surprise, "It's a real death exemption token. But how did you get it?" The death exemption token was only given to people who had made great contributions to the number one peerless family. Every generation's family head would not give more than 3 death exemption tokens. What contribution did foreign Chamberlain Lu make? She actually obtained a death exemption token? Foreign Chamberlain Lu said proudly, several years ago, during the struggle with the second most powerful family, the family head was in danger. I was the one who blocked a fatal blow for him without regard for my own safety. Therefore, the family head secretly bestowed me a death exemption token. The great battle several years ago was indeed rather dangerous. She did not expect that the seemingly safe and sound family head would actually almost meet with danger. She stared at the 3 clan elders and said, "Now, can you still kill me?" The 3 clan elders looked hesitant. The death exemption token was bestowed by the family head. Who would dare to kill her? The Fenghua sect master thought for a long time and said, "You can be spared from death, but you can't escape punishment." With a flick of her finger, a seal was inserted into foreign Chamberlain Lu's body, restricting her strength and turning her into a mortal. Lock her in the dungeon and wait for the family head's decision. Although she could not kill her, she could still imprison her. At the same time, she took away the token in foreign Chamberlain Lu's hand. The death exemption token can only be used once. Foreign Chamberlain Lu felt extremely pained. That was her life-saving item, and now she had lost it. Everything was thanks to Suyu. She stared at Suyu with hatred, her eyes filled with extreme hatred. If there was even the slightest possibility, she would definitely make Suyu pay the price in blood. Seeing her being imprisoned, Suyu's heart was filled with regret. Everything was going according to plan, except for the immunity medallion. If he wanted to use the same trick again and let foreign Chamberlain Lu escape from prison to silence her, it would be too suspicious. He could not kill her for the time being, unless he wanted to expose himself and forcefully use force. At that moment, the Fenghua Pathmaster looked at Suyu and said, "Has she ever done anything unfair to you? If she has, I can help you right now." The only unfair thing she had done was arranging for him to stay in the East mining area. However, the opening of the heavenly pure coffin was imminent, so he naturally could not leave. No. After nodding, Taoist Master Fenghua and the other 2 elders left silently. The next day, the whole town was in an uproar. Foreign Chamberlain Lu was actually a surviving member of the second peerless family. Knowing that she was imprisoned in the dungeon, the majority of the people in the town clapped their hands in glee. Normally, foreign Chamberlain Lu was extremely arrogant and domineering. Now that she had ended up in such a state, it was naturally gratifying. In response, Suyu was indifferent. He entered the east mining area expressionlessly and quietly entered the tunnel. As expected, that group of people was trying to dig open the heavenly pure coffin again. This went on for half a month. On this day, Suyu and Xiao Dai hid in front of the heavenly pure coffin, closely watching the actions of the 3 people. They used a special magic tool and finally broke the last restriction. With a muffled, thunder-like sound, the heavenly pure or coffin was finally revealed. An evil aura that had been sealed for a long time assaulted Suyu's senses. Even though he was far away, Suyu felt his heart skip a beat. Fortunately, Suyu heaved a sigh of relief. Through his transparent eye, he could confirm that the skeleton could not be any more dead. What really emanated the evil aura was an animal skin book placed in front of the skeleton's chest. There were very rare words on the cover, and ordinary people would not be able to recognize which clan's language it was written in. There seemed to be some extremely evil existence hidden in the book, which made people shudder. The target of the three people was the animal skin book. Evil Emperor, Supreme Scripture. It's really here. Among the three people, the woman whom Suyu felt was familiar had a look of deep joy in her eyes. Chapter 2183. The young master has been searching for many years, excavating more than 100 ancient tombs of the great ancient emperors. Finally, he found it in the ancient tomb of the Broken Sky Mountain, the young man said. The old man sighed. From the very beginning, the young master had deduced that the geomancy and geography of the Broken Sky Mountain were most likely the ancient tomb of a super strong martial artist. After excavating it, it was indeed the case. The woman agreed. The young master is wise and farsighted. We are impressed. The young man said, What I admire the most is the young master's remarkable abilities. Even though the Broken Sky Mountain was occupied, you could still arrange for us to continue excavating here without being disturbed. Hearing this, Suyu's heart skipped a beat. He had long felt that it was strange that he had come here because of Guest Liu. Those three people couldn't have offended Guest Liu, could they? Now it seemed that there was a person of high status in the Broken Sky Mountain who had been bribed by the second peerless family. Who could that person be? As they pondered, they had already begun to retrieve the evil Emperor's Supreme Scripture. Should we make a move? Xiao Dai licked her lips. The treasure, she thought, was obviously the beast skin scroll. Suyu shook his head. Don't act rashly. That beast skin scroll might not be easy to retrieve. It is indeed not easy to retrieve. If this item is not handled properly, it will be dangerous, Xiao Dai said. Things that could make her feel dangerous were rare. The two of them watched closely. The three people were also very careful. They used a special container to carefully store the evil Emperor Supreme Scripture. Then, they immediately strengthened the seal, sealing the beast skin scroll to prevent any accidents. The whole process was very smooth, without any accidents. The three of them heaved a sigh of relief, their faces relaxed. What should we do with the corpse? The woman asked as she looked at the corpse in the sky pure or coffin. The old man was experienced and prudent. He said with a hint of fear, After all, it is the corpse of a strong martial artist. He might have left behind some sort of contingency to prevent outsiders from damaging the body. It is enough for us to obtain the evil Emperor Supreme Scripture. Don't think about the corpse to avoid unnecessary trouble. The young man stared greedily at the sky, pure dust between the brows of the corpse. It is a pity we can't touch it. We cannot let go of this sky, pure dust. The old man was a bit hesitant, but seeing that everyone had worked hard for a long time, he didn't want to stop them. He said, Be careful. If something goes wrong, stop immediately. I know, the young man said. He took out a Tao artifact at the immortal embryo level and gently hooked the heaven pure dust. The bright and resplendent sky pure dust fell to the ground like a glass bead, emitting a crisp sound. Just as the young man was about to pull it over, the sky pure dust suddenly dimmed. The holy light that it emitted was quickly extinguished, and in the end, all that was left was a dull, ordinary crystal. The surface of his body was covered with countless cracks. Apparently, it was because the holy light in his body had dissipated. The young man was startled. Then, he sighed with great disappointment. After so many years, this sky-cleansing dust has already lost its effect. What a pity. Suyu's eyes were filled with disappointment. He had thought that he would be able to obtain a grain of pure sky dust. He had not expected such an outcome. Let's go and report to the young master. The old man looked at the remains and said. But as soon as he finished speaking, there was a slight cracking sound. There were only the three of them in the ancient tomb. It was extremely quiet. How could such a sound escape their ears? The three of them looked at the remains that should have been completely dead. What made their hair stand on end was that the corpse actually stood up from the coffin. Waves of evil energy, which had the same origin as the animal skin book, emanated from its body. It came back to life, the young man said in horror. The old man stared at the remains and said regretfully, I should have stopped you. The function of the sky-cleansing dust should be to suppress the evil energy in the remains. Now that the sky-cleansing dust has been shattered, there is nothing to suppress it, and the evil energy in its body has awakened. The evil energy has been accumulating for an unknown number of years. It has already developed its own consciousness and is controlling the remains. As he spoke, he stepped back and said, Let's leave this place immediately. The other two did not dare to stay any longer. They left the ancient tomb without hesitation. However, just as they were about to leave, the remains uttered a cryptic incantation. The sealed demonic Emperor Supreme, Sutra, suddenly spun and used its sharp horn to cut open the seal. At the same time, an extremely fierce evil energy was released from within the book. The old man holding the animal skin book was caught off guard and was struck by the evil energy on the spot. His two eyes immediately sank into a gloomy darkness. Elder Yuan, the young man cried out in shock. He immediately stepped forward and pulled the old man away from the evil Emperor Supreme scripture. However, suddenly, the young man felt a chill in his chest. The old man's claw had pierced through the young man's body. Soon, the young man's eyes darkened as well. The two of them turned around in a daze and looked at the remaining woman. The woman was so frightened that her soul almost left her body. She looked at the evil Emperor Supreme scripture reluctantly, then turned around and left the ancient tomb. Before leaving, she pulled the ancient tomb's mechanism and sealed it once again. Suyu was also shocked to witness such an unexpected scene. It turned out that the evil Emperor Supreme scripture was an evil book that could control people's hearts. Just as he was pondering whether he should go down, the old man and the young man, who had not caught up to the woman, turned their heads and stared in Suyu's direction. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. He had been discovered. To be precise, the scripture had discovered his and Xiao Dai's existence. Roar! The two of them let out inhuman, beastly roars and rushed over together. Since I've been discovered, I have no choice but to act. Suyu pulled out a long sword that was burning with golden flames. It was the boundless karmic flame. If one were to talk about the restraining effect of evil, it would be this thing. Kicking away the sky crystal mine in front of him, Suyu jumped into the ancient tomb with his sword and swept out the ultimate ruin. The boundless karmic flame swept out in a circular arc, sweeping away the evil energy in the vicinity. The old man and the young man retreated subconsciously, as if they were extremely afraid of the boundless karmic flame. Space freeze! Suyu shouted softly, freezing the two of them. He then swept forward and pierced the two of them with his sword at the same time. The powerful, boundless karmic flame surged into their bodies, burning away the evil energy in them. The two of them collapsed to the ground weakly, seriously injured. To prevent them from being controlled by the evil energy again, he threw them into the space of the Buddha pearl. Swoosh! At that moment, the evil Emperor Supreme scripture spun and shot out a large amount of evil energy, condensing into countless pitch-black steel needles that shot toward Suyu. Zhang's small world. Having seen with his own eyes how the old man was demonized, he did not dare to be careless. Swish! 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 Countless steel needles sank into the Zhang small world, like mud falling into the sea, unable to harm Suyu at all. The evil Emperor Supreme scripture saw that its attack was ineffective, so it spun around and fell into the hands of the corpse. The corpse held the animal skin book in his hand and opened it. All of a sudden, a shocking evil energy rolled out with a rumble, forming an extremely hideous giant door in front of him. As he recited the incantation, strong figures formed by evil energy walked out of the door one after another. There were 7 of them in total, and each of them had an earth-shattering, terrifying aura. The strength of their auras was no less than that of a Pathmaster. Suyu's eyelids twitched wildly, and his heart became extremely solemn. He could easily deal with a Pathmaster, but there were 7. Just the thought of it made Suyu's scalp go numb. Leave them to me, you snatched the scripture. At that moment, Xiao Dai took a step forward and took a deep breath. The figure of a butterfly emerged behind her. With a sudden flap of its wings, a peerlessly powerful storm was formed. The storm formed a vortex like a bottomless pit that sucked in everything. The 7 demonized figures were immediately sucked in by the sucking force, temporarily immobilizing them. Suyu's eyes flashed. Seizing the opportunity, he leaped toward the corpse. World annihilation force. 8 strands of natural laws lingered in his palm, like a sudden annihilation, giving birth to a world annihilation force. Puff! How could a corpse that had been dead for an unknown amount of time be able to resist such a powerful world-destroying power? In an instant, there was nothing left of the corpse. Only the evil Emperor Supreme Scripture was left floating in the air, completely unscathed. Then it began to flip to the second page. As it flipped open, an evil energy that was 10,000 times more powerful and evil than the previous one suddenly rushed out. Suyu's heart trembled. How much evil energy was hidden in this book? At that moment, he shouted, "Time and space freeze." Under the double freezing of time and space, the animal skin book was only slightly hindered. Suyu's pupils shrank. He knew that a critical moment had arrived, and he could not delay it any longer. Zhaoxi. He held the boundless karmic flame sword with both hands, and a powerful and mysterious force appeared in his palms. With a simple and unadorned sword move, it stabbed into the evil Emperor Supreme Scripture. With a slight explosion, the evil energy that was about to rush out was destroyed by the sword. At the same time, the entire animal skin book was pierced through by the sword. The animal skin book was like a living creature, struggling and squirming, trying to get rid of the sword. Unfortunately, it could not succeed. As the book was subdued, the 7 demonized figures that had been released from the first door naturally returned to the book. Xiao Dai let go of the book and pounced over, biting the evil Emperor Supreme Scripture. Suyu's eyelids twitched as he watched. "Aren't you afraid of being poisoned to death?" Xiao Dai did not seem to hear him. Her face was filled with excitement, and no matter how much the animal skin book struggled, she would not let go. Within the book, waves of shocking evil energy were being sucked away by Xiao Dai at a speed visible to the naked eye. As the evil energy was sucked away, the animal skin book became slower and slower. In the end, when all the evil energy was sucked away, it was motionless like a dead object. Burp! Xiao Dai opened her mouth and let out a burp. Touching her round belly, she looked at Suyu with some embarrassment and said, "Don't laugh at me. Just this once, don't do it again. When I evolve again, I won't eat so much anymore." Suyu suddenly understood. The reason why Xiao Dai ate so much every time was for the sake of evolution. Right now, if she were to evolve again, she would probably evolve into a mature form. By then, she might not be able to eat as much as she did now. "I'm not laughing." Suyu pointed to his face. "You're not allowed to laugh in your heart." Xiao Dai showed a long-lost coquettish expression. "Hee hee, go ahead. I'm looking forward to your final form after evolution." Suyu smiled and stroked her head. Xiao Dai did not resist. A hint of sadness flashed across her face as she said, "The time it takes for me to evolve this time may be longer than before. You must live well." Cultivation was ruthless. No one knew when their path of cultivation would be fixed. "I've weathered many storms and waves. How could I die? Don't worry. I will welcome you out of the cocoon with a smile." Xiao Dai raised her head, her crystal-clear eyes filled with emotion. Chapter 2184. For my safety, so you cannot help but laugh. Once upon a time, he needed to feed the caterpillar, but now he needed to take care of his safety? Of course. "You will like my gift," Xiao Dai said confidently. "Come here." Suyu smiled and walked over. "Come closer." Suyu took another step forward, his face almost touching her nose. "A little more." Again, smack. Suddenly, Xiao Dai kissed Suyu on the cheek. Suyu subconsciously pulled away, covering his face, and said in surprise, "You?" He had never had any thoughts about Xiao Dai. As he had said before, he had watched Xiao Dai grow up little by little, and he really could not develop feelings between a man and a woman. From beginning to end, he had treated her like a little girl. "What are you thinking? Narcissist?" Xiao Dai glared at Suyu. Look in the mirror and look at your face. Suyu condensed an ice mirror in front of him and looked at his face. There was a 9-colored butterfly mark on his cheek. The wings of the mark were slowly flapping, vivid and lifelike. Her kiss had turned into a butterfly mark. Suyu was stunned and did not know whether to laugh or cry. You want a man like me to have a butterfly mark on my face? It will disappear later, Xiao Dai said seriously. Xiao Dai said with a serious expression, this mark contains my innate ability. From now on, you can share my ability. Suyu pointed to his mouth. You mean, I will become greedy? Hearing this, Xiao Dai clenched her fists. I have an urge to beat you up. Why do you think this is? How is her talent greedy? It was clearly capable of devouring everything. There is almost nothing in the world that could not be bitten open. Huh? Suyu laughed and stopped teasing her. Thank you. Xiao Dai pouted and said, I'm going to ignore you, big bad guy. Then, she went back into the 9-jade spiritual pearl. Suyu touched the mark on his face. It disappeared quickly and appeared in the depths of his soul. As long as his soul activated it, he could share the nature-defying, devouring ability. Suyu's heart warmed slightly. That little guy, although she resisted him verbally, in fact, she had always regarded him as the closest person. Just as he was lost in thought, the demonic Emperor Supreme Sutra, which had been pierced by the unbounded karmic flame sword, fell to the ground. The evil aura in his body was gone, and he was no longer in any danger. Suyu bent down to pick it up. When he opened it, he discovered that it was written in a long-lost ancient language. Unfortunately, he knew those words. Isn't it some kind of cultivation technique? Suyu had initially thought that the evil Emperor Supreme scripture was some kind of powerful cultivation technique. After reading through the content, Zhang Xian realized that it was merely the autobiography of a man who called himself the demonic monarch. This evil emperor was an ancient almighty from the beginning of an era. Relying on a throne, his evil techniques were extremely powerful, and no one could compare to him. However, his actions were too evil. Throughout his life, he had challenged the strongest experts of one civilization after another. If the other party was defeated, he would slaughter the entire civilization that the other party was in and absorb their flesh and blood to cultivate his evil technique. In his lifetime, countless civilizations were annihilated because of him. For a long time, the evil Dharch was the nightmare of many civilizations in the absolute beginning realm. Many advanced civilizations chased after the evil Dharch, but they never succeeded. Instead, they suffered countless casualties. The evil Dharch slaughtered everywhere, his evil techniques becoming stronger and stronger, endangering the entire absolute beginning realm. The Heavenly Law Palace had made a move, and it was the Heavenly Law Palace Master who had the highest cultivation. After 1,000 years of pursuit, traversing the entire absolute beginning realm, she finally killed the insufferably arrogant evil Dharch with her sword. However, although the evil Dharch was dead, his throne remained. Furthermore, before he died, he hid his throne somewhere and used the blood of the demonic emperor to leave behind a demonic emperor supreme scripture, which recorded his life and the location of his throne. Reading this, Suyu's heart thumped. According to the Supreme Sutra, the throne was stolen from the heavenly court by the evil Dharch. It was a throne reserved for emperors. It was imbued with the power of an ancient god. Sitting on the throne, one could share the perspective of the ancient god and understand all the puzzles of the world. That was why the evil Thearka's evil techniques were cultivated so quickly and so nature-defying. It was all because of that throne, and the true name of that throne was the Throne of Heaven and Earth. That was one of the 4 pieces of the Emperor's set. Suyu had seen the Emperor killing sword before. Now, the second of the 4 pieces, the Throne of Heaven and Earth, had appeared. Now, Suyu was on the verge of breaking through to the Path Master level. Transforming the body and soul into the Tao was easy, but transforming the rules into the Tao. Since ancient times, no one had been able to transform the 8 great rules into the domain at the same time. The Throne of Heaven and Earth might be the only way for Suyu to transform the rules into the Tao. The 4 pieces of the Emperor's set, we meet again. Yu sighed in his heart. At the same time, he could not help but wonder if Zhang Wushuang would appear again now that the 4 pieces of the Emperor's set had appeared. Zhang Wushuang had an invisible connection with the 4 pieces of the Emperor's set, allowing him to sense where the 4 pieces of the Emperor's set were at any time. The 4 pieces of the Emperor's set are destined to belong to him. Yu smiled lightly. That's if I don't say anything. With Yu around, the 4 pieces of the Emperor's set might not just belong to Zhang Wushuang. I must have this item. He already knew the whereabouts of the throne of heaven and earth. It was at a place called the Broken Love Platform. Once he confirmed where it was, he would immediately head there to find the throne of heaven and earth. Putting away the Sutra of Supreme, Yu looked at the dim sky, pure dust, and returned in disappointment. Not long after he returned to the inn, the communication pendant in his hand suddenly rang. Yu looked at it and his eyes shone. After resting for a while, he went to a deserted manor outside the city. As soon as he appeared, he heard a clear and melodious voice. Mr. Wuchen, you really keep your word. Looking at the person who spoke, he saw that it was the beautiful woman dressed in palace attire who sold information. Her eyes were smiling as she made an inviting gesture. Please come in. Yu glanced inside and found that he was not the only one who had come. There were many young talents from the number 1 peerless family. Among them, there was a man with long golden hair who was dressed in a feather robe. He was the strongest of the younger generation among the many branches of the number 1 peerless family, Autumn Guest of Wudong. Apart from Bai Yun and Hong Xian from the main branch, no one else was a match for him. It was said that he had already completed the soul transformation and was very powerful in the Tao of Souls. As for the rest, they were all famous young talent from the number 1 peerless family. They are all people with potential from the number 1 peerless family, Yu thought to himself. All of a sudden, Yu discovered a familiar figure among the crowd. However, she was not from the number 1 peerless family, but a remnant of the number 2 peerless family. Not long ago, he had seen her in the ancient tomb of the evil emperor. Looking at her, and then at the beautiful woman in palace attire, Yu was secretly shocked. He had long felt that this woman looked familiar. He had thought that he had seen her before, but now he realized that the reason she looked familiar was because this woman looked similar to the beautiful woman in palace attire. You look unfamiliar, Yu said as he looked at the woman. The beautiful woman in palace attire smiled. That's my sister, right? She is in the East Mining area with you. Why? Haven't you seen her before? Yu thought to himself. The beautiful woman in palace attire was also a remnant of the number 2 peerless family. Would a remnant of the number 1 peerless family be kind enough to help the elites of the number 1 peerless family? Chapter 2185. We've never met before. Yu looked at his sister as if he were a stranger. The beautiful lady saw her expression and smiled like the wind. She called her over and said, Xiao Duo, let me introduce you. This is the famous young master Wu Chun, and this is my sister, Shu Xianduo. Shu Xianduo had delicate features, and she bowed lightly. Mr. Wu Chun's name resounds like thunder. Everyone in the city knew about Mr. Wu Chun's reputation, as he was able to excavate 1,000 pounds of heavenly pure ore in the abandoned East Mining area. Everyone in the city knew that Yu had the talent to search for treasures. Otherwise, it would be impossible to explain how he had obtained so much heavenly pure Oregon. You flatter me. Yu smiled warmly, and nothing could be seen from his expression. However, he was extremely vigilant. His agreement with the beautiful woman was 1,000 pounds of heavenly pure Oregon. But his sister Shu Xianduo had been able to pass through the mine tomb, which was filled with heavenly pure Oregon. How could she have collected so little? Would the beautiful woman lack heavenly pure ore? She must have some ulterior motive for inviting him. Mr. Wuchen, please take care of me later. Well said, Yu said, but his mind was racing. He was sure that the beautiful woman was up to no good, and it was hard to say whether the world's supreme power existed. Now, perhaps he should retreat. The only question was, could he leave now? Shu Xianduo's abilities were still manageable, but the beautiful woman had yet to see through them. She had dared to deceive so many half-path masters from the number 1 peerless family to come here, so she must be very confident that she could suppress them at the crucial moment. Suyu had already used the time of day and night in the ancient tomb. The Pathmaster's power in his body was not enough to use a sword technique that could kill Pathmasters. At most, he could only kill some half-Pathmasters. Therefore, even though he knew that the beautiful woman had ulterior motives, he could not act rashly. Everyone is here. We can set off now, the beautiful woman said. Hearing this, everyone's eyes were filled with anticipation. Shopkeeper Shu, please lead the way. Autumn guest of Wudong smiled. The beautiful woman smiled. We all have a deal, so you don't need to thank me. As she spoke, she looked at Suyu and said, I hope that Mr. Wuchen will help us. Suyu slightly furrowed his brows. It was fine to say this in private, but it was inappropriate to say it in public, especially in front of the most outstanding prodigies of the number 1 peerless family. As expected, Autumn guest of the Wutong tree looked over with his long and narrow eyes. He sized Suyu up and said, Oh, Shopkeeper Shu means that we still have to rely on young Master Wuchen to obtain the supreme power of the world. As the number 1 person of the branch family, he indeed had the capital to be unconvinced. The others also felt uncomfortable at these words and looked at him with astonishment and disdain. Every single one of them here was a famous heaven's favorite. How could they allow an unknown heaven's favorite to walk all over their heads? Suyu calmly said, Shopkeeper Shu, you think too highly of me. I'm just an ordinary martial artist, and I should rely on the people here. Although he could easily defeat anyone of the same generation as him, there was no need to offend them for no reason. At least you have some self-awareness, Autumn guest of Wudong said lightly. With him present, it was not young Master Dustless' turn to step forward. Seeing Suyu like this, the rest of the people looked away. The beautiful woman in the palace gown smiled sweetly and said, Don't look down on young Master Wuchen. He is very powerful. As soon as she said this, the people who had already looked away became unhappy again. For some reason, she was deliberately trying to antagonize Suyu and the others. Suyu frowned deeply. What was this woman up to? Seeing that she was about to continue, Suyu said coldly, Shopkeeper Shu, how long do you plan to drag this out? Hearing his displeasure, she smiled and changed the topic. Let's go. Under her lead, the group left the town and headed for the southeast corner of the Broken Heaven Mountain. A few days later, they stood in front of a desert. As far as the eye could see, there was yellow sand flying everywhere, with no end in sight. A towering ancient stone tablet stood alone in the middle of the desert. The stone tablet was the dividing line between the number 1 and number 2 peerless families. The supreme power of the world is here. Autumn guest of Wudong voiced her doubts. The supreme power of the world would usually nourish the nearby living creatures, so spiritual objects were everywhere. The barren land in front of them did not look like a place where the supreme power of the world existed. The beautiful woman in the palace gown smiled sweetly. Don't look at everything on the surface. Do you know that this desert used to be the place with the most abundant spiritual energy among the 7 unique civilizations? Everyone was surprised and said they did not know. The 7 unique civilizations were too big and had a long history. There were many things that one would not know without deliberate research. This place used to be the former capital of the Qiani ancient kingdom. The beautiful woman in the palace gown showed yearning and regret. The Tiani ancient kingdom, Autumn guest of Wudong, was in awe. The country that founded the 7 unique civilizations. Yes, the beautiful woman in the palace gown was desolate. Back then, the Tiani ancient kingdom unified the 7 unique civilizations. How glorious and magnificent was it? However, it was destroyed overnight, and the ancient kingdom was torn apart. It gradually declined to this day. The Tiani ancient kingdom was the only ancient kingdom in the history of the 7 unique civilizations. Under its rule, there were many strong and talented people. The monarch of the Tiani ancient kingdom, the Tiani great emperor, was even more talented. He led the people of the ancient kingdom and conquered another 7-star civilization. At that time, the 7 unique civilizations were truly glorious. Unfortunately, the good times did not last long. The Tiani Great Emperor died mysteriously overnight, and the many strong people led by him immediately lost their backbone. Then, under the instigation of external forces, the Tiani ancient kingdom fell into a long and endless civil war. In the end, the glorious Tiani ancient kingdom was divided into 4. And in the long war, it continued to divide. In the end, it became the current 7 great clans, each ruling a region. The former Tiani ancient kingdom was thus renamed to the 7 unique civilizations. The people of the 7 unique civilizations all yearned for the Tiani ancient kingdom. That was when they were at their peak. How could they not be surprised to know that this desert was the former capital of the Tiani ancient kingdom? But according to historical records, isn't the ancient capital of the Tiani ancient kingdom in the 7th peerless clan? Autumn Guest of Wudong asked after a brief moment of surprise. The 7th peerless clan had always regarded themselves as the descendants of the Tiani Great Emperor and announced to the outside world that they were the legitimate descendants of the Tiani ancient kingdom. The place where they lived was the former capital of the ancient kingdom. The beautiful woman in the palace gown nodded lightly and said, "Indeed, the true ancient capital of the Tiani ancient kingdom is indeed in the 7th peerless clan. Then why do you say that this place is the kingdom of the Tiani ancient kingdom?" Chapter 2186. Hearing this, the crowd was intrigued. Did such a thing really happen? Yes. When the Tiani ancient kingdom was first established, they found that there was an uncontrollable force under the capital, so they chose to move the capital. This was too long ago, and it happened at the beginning of the founding of the kingdom, so it was not recorded in the history books. I found it in an ancient book and came here to investigate. As a result, I found a powerful force of heaven and earth underground. Autumn Guest of the Wutong Tree was moved. Could it be that the uncontrollable force has not erupted after such a long time? If that was the case, the 1st and 2nd peerless families were in danger. Even the Tiani Great Emperor had chosen to move the capital, which showed how terrifying that force was. There is no need to worry. Otherwise, where did this desert come from? Why are the ruins of the ancient capital nowhere to be seen? The beautiful woman said. Hearing this, everyone gasped in shock. Could it be that all the deserts were caused by the eruption of that force? The 2nd and 3rd peerless families were all located deep within the desert. Is there any other reason? The beautiful woman asked. Autumn Guest of the Wutong Tree said, "Then, the force of heaven and earth you found is the remnant force of the past, hidden deep underground, ready to erupt," the beautiful woman said. However, even if it is the remnant force, it is still extraordinarily powerful. It is at the core of the force, and even a pathmaster will die if he falls into it. Hearing this, everyone's hearts trembled. However, as long as we are on the periphery of that force, there should be no problem. The beautiful woman looked at the sky and said, "Let's go down. The force will erupt soon." She pointed at the void in front of the boundary monument. There was a ripple, revealing a formation that had been set up for a long time. Under the formation, a ruin was hidden. The beautiful woman walked forward and stamped her foot in a corner of the ruin. An ancient well appeared on the ground. She jumped down first, followed by Autumn Guest of the Wutong Tree and the others. Finally, Suyu was left behind, hesitating. "Mr. Wuchen, time waits for no man. What are you waiting for?" Shu Xianduo looked at Suyu meaningfully. Suyu nodded and jumped into the well. After falling for 2 hours, he stood firmly on a boulder. Looking around, this unknown depth was an extremely large underground karst cave. The walls of the cave were decorated with sky-pure ore, emitting a pure and holy radiance that illuminated the underground. With the help of the light, one could clearly see a slumbering 30,000-meter-long python lying deep underground. His body exuded a suffocating aura. That is the remnant power of the world. However, because it has been dormant for too long, it has already developed intelligence, the beautiful woman in the palace attire said. Everyone's expression changed. Wouldn't the power of heaven and earth, which had intelligence, be able to destroy them at any time? Sir, are you joking? Autumn guest of the Wutong tree had a gloomy expression. This heaven and earth power has its own intelligence and can kill all of us at will. You want to borrow its power to form a body. You are delusional. He was so angry that he soared into the sky and waved his hand to leave. Whoever isn't afraid of death can go ahead. I'm not going to keep you company. Compared to the Tao incarnation, his life was naturally more important. As soon as Autumn guest of Wudong left, the rest of the people wavered and prepared to leave. Aren't you forgetting something? The beautiful woman said indifferently. Autumn guest of Wudong said, Are you talking about a deal? Sorry, you hid the details first, so don't blame me for breaking the contract later. The beautiful woman in the palace attire had an agreement with everyone. No, I'm not talking about the agreement, but you seem to have forgotten your identity. Autumn guest of Wudong frowned. Identity? The number one peerless family. The number one branch. Autumn guest of Wudong. Is there a problem? The beautiful woman's gaze became playful. There's no problem. The problem is that I am the remnant of the second peerless family that you all speak of. As soon as these words came out, everyone turned pale with fright. Remnant, Autumn guest of Wutong's eyebrows rose high, and then his long and narrow eyes narrowed deeply. You mean that you want us to help you and send you on your way? To dare announce his identity in front of so many geniuses from the number one peerless family. He was indeed seeking death. Is that so? The beautiful woman smiled deeply, and her body suddenly released a crushing aura. Autumn guest of Wudong, who had soared into the sky, was directly pressed to the ground by this aura. The rest of the weaker ones were directly forced to kneel on the ground by this violent aura. Only a few people could still stand, including Suyu. Pathmaster? Everyone present turned pale with fright. Autumn guest of Wudong's face was even paler, and he stared at her in fear. He had never thought that the beautiful woman in the palace attire would be a Pathmaster, and the Pathmaster of the second peerless family. Now, do you still want to send me on my way? The beautiful woman in the palace attire had completely exposed herself, and she said with a faint smile. Autumn guest of Wudong immediately lowered his head, not daring to look into her eyes. The beautiful woman in the palace attire smiled, looked around, and her gaze fell on the few people who had not knelt down. When she glanced at Suyu, her gaze was fixed on him, and she said with a smile, Looking at you, you don't seem surprised at all. Everything was within her expectations, so how could she be surprised? Suyu's expression was indifferent as he said, Senior, you have deceived us all the way here. I guess you don't care about what we have. If you have anything to say, you can say it now. Everyone else kept quiet out of fear, but Suyu spoke as if he was on equal footing with her. The beautiful woman in the palace attire looked Suyu up and down and said, Your tone really makes people uncomfortable. There was a hint of threat in her words, as if she was about to attack. But then, her eyes turned into crescent moons, and she said with a smile, However, capable people are always given special treatment. Capable people? Autumn guest of Wudong, who was lying on the ground, couldn't understand how Suyu was worthy of a strong Pathmaster's admiration. The beautiful woman in the palace attire continued, I didn't ask you people to come here for your pitiful things. I came here to ask you to help me retrieve something from this power of heaven and earth. Everyone was silent, as they had no other choice but to listen to the beautiful woman in the palace attire. That thing was left behind by a concubine of the great emperor of Tianni, and it is called the Broken Love Flute. Because of an accident, it fell here, and it was enveloped in this power of heaven and earth. If you help me retrieve this flute, I can consider letting you go. Everyone looked at each other, and they were all deep in thought. Suyu's eyes flickered, and he said, You are a strong Pathmaster, so why do you need us, a group of half-step Pathmasters, to retrieve the flute? His question was also on everyone's mind. The beautiful woman in the palace attire said calmly, It's simple because this power of heaven and earth is more sensitive to people with stronger cultivation. If I enter it, I'm afraid it will wake up immediately. Only you people can enter its body and look for the flute. So that was why. Chapter 2187. The beautiful woman in palace attire looked at everyone and said leisurely, "Not only will I let anyone who obtains the broken love flute go, I'll even give him a defensive Tao artifact, immortal embryo." Hearing this, everyone's eyes shone with a glimmer of hope for survival, even though their emotions were fluctuating. Autumn Guest of Wutong slammed his palms on the ground. Before most people could react, he took a step forward and jumped into the giant python's body. The others jumped in one after another. The beautiful woman's words might not be trustworthy, but they didn't have the right to choose. Under the strict law of survival of the fittest, they could only go with the flow and fight for their slim chance of survival. "Why don't you go?" Shu Xianduo stared at Su Yu and asked indifferently. Su Yu did not reply, but tapped his own cheek with his finger. A faint butterfly mark quietly flashed. He was sharing Xiao Dai's talent. At this moment, he was looking at everything from Xiao Dai's perspective. Unlike humans, Xiao Dai saw everything in the world with different colors. According to their strength, they were divided into 7 major grades: red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. For example, Shu Xianduo was yellow in Xiao Dai's eyes. His elder sister, the beautiful woman in palace attire, had a higher cultivation level. The giant python formed from the power of heaven and earth was green in color. He observed the giant python and found that the color of the python's 7 inches was obviously darker. There was a very high-level alien creature there. Quietly retreating from Xiao Dai's field of vision, Su Yu entered the giant python's body unhurriedly. After he left, Shu Xianduo said thoughtfully, "Sister, why do you favor Mr. Wu Qin so much?" "It's just that I accidentally discovered a few more sky-pure ores," the beautiful woman said indifferently. "On the surface, he is indeed mediocre. His body, soul, and laws are all devoid of Tao transformation. However, if his body wasn't in a severely overdrawn state, I'm afraid that even I might not be a match for him." Big sister must be joking. You are a Tao master, and he hasn't even completed one of his 3 transformations. So how could he be your opponent? Shu Xianduo was unconvinced. The beautiful woman patted her on the head and said, "I've warned you time and again that there's always someone better out there. The world is vast, and there will always be existences beyond your imagination. Young Master Wu Qin is one of them." "Are you serious?" "Of course. Does he have to get the heartbroken flute?" The beautiful woman smiled faintly and said, "I think so." Shu Xianduo had a weird expression as she looked at her suspiciously. "Then, he alone is enough. Why do you need to invite others? Furthermore, why did you deliberately stir up conflict between them? If he is really that powerful, wouldn't Autumn Guest of Wudong and the others be digging their own graves if they really make things difficult for Su Yu?" She had a puzzled look on her face. She felt that her sister's actions were unnecessary. The beautiful woman's expression was unfathomable as she said, "If they don't seek their own deaths, how can the second peerless clan take them in?" Only now did Shu Xianduo realize. "Sister, are you interested in his potential and want to take him in as your subordinate?" The beautiful woman in the palace gown intended for Su Yu to get rid of the many young experts of the first peerless family. She would inform the first peerless family of this matter. Would the number 1 peerless family let this matter rest after so many top young geniuses had fallen? Young Master Dustless would inevitably be expelled from the number 1 peerless clan, and he would be hunted down at the same time. And young Master Wu Qin, who had no place to stay, was recruited by the second most powerful aristocratic family. Where do you think? The answer was obvious. Of course, the premise is that he can retrieve the love-severing flute alive. The beautiful woman in the palace gown looked down at the giant python of the power of heaven and earth. Inside the body of the python, there seemed to be only 100,000 feet long, but it was actually a cavern world. As far as the eye could see, there was an endless mass of mixed light. It was messy and mixed. It was the drifting power of heaven and earth. Su Yu's eyes were filled with regret. Unfortunately, the power of heaven and earth was too scattered and it was far from enough to temper his body. Let's find the love-severing flute first. Su Yu's eyes shone with a shrewd light, and he took a step towards the place where he had sensed the love-severing flute. However, when he arrived, several people had already arrived before him. Among them was Autumn, guest of Wudong. It seemed that Su Yu was not the only one who had a special ability to search. Here comes another one. Autumn, guest of Wudong, glanced at Su Yu coldly. Her eyes were filled with hostility. Su Yu turned a blind eye to her. He looked ahead at the beating heart suspended in midair. That should be the core of the giant python. Visible to the naked eye, there was a vague shadow of a flute within the heart. However, it would not be easy to get the flute. There were faint marks left on the heart, which should have been left by the attacks of Autumn, guest of Wudong, and the others. They could not do anything to the heart. If the heart is not broken, it will be difficult to retrieve the flute. If we cannot complete our mission, all of us will die, an exhausted young man said, his face pale. A woman could not help but burst into tears. I don't want to die yet. Why are you crying? Autumn, guest of Wudong, snorted angrily. It is not the final moment yet. With a flip of his palm, he took out a chessboard that was rippling with watery light. It was glistening and almost transparent. This is the illusory water cosmos chess. Autumn, guest of Wudong, tossed the chessboard into the air, and it expanded infinitely, including the heart. The position of the heart was even more subtle. It was the commander of the other side. Autumn, guest of Wudong himself, stood on the commander's position. All of you stand in your positions. This way, you can gather your strength together and destroy the enemy's commander within the chessboard. Everyone understood. I will arrange a suitable position according to the level of your strength. Autumn, guest of Wudong, looked around at everyone and said, Poisonous Mandarin Duck, you will take the position. Bashan Shozi, you will take the position. Everyone in front of him had their own arrangements. When it was finally Su Yu's turn, he said lightly, You will be a pawn. In other words, Su Yu's strength was the lowest among them. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Autumn, guest of Wudong, was deliberately trying to suppress Su Yu. As the path master, the beautiful woman in the palace gown had repeatedly spoken highly of him, which showed how extraordinary he was. Treating him like a pawn and ordering him around was clearly an attempt to humiliate and suppress him. Pawn, listen up. Take a step forward. Su Yu's position was already at the edge of the heart. If he took another step forward, he would collide with the defense circulating on the surface of the heart. At the moment of collision, he should be able to detect the source of this layer of defense and destroy it. Of course, Su Yu would be instantly sent flying. Unexpectedly, Su Yu did not pay attention to him at all. He was focused on examining the heart. Are you deaf? I told you to move forward. Autumn, guest of Wudong, ordered. Su Yu furrowed his brows and said indifferently, Ridiculous. Why should I listen to your orders? Autumn, guest of Wudong, asked, Apart from my illusory cloud cosmos chess, what other way is there to break the heart? If you don't want to get everyone killed, listen to my orders obediently. He looked at Su Yu with righteousness. To be honest, Su Yu had not paid any attention to him from the beginning. But this person was too full of himself. It was impossible for Su Yu to ignore him, even if he wanted to. Chapter 2188. He lifted the tip of his right foot gently, and then dropped it. The word die, under his foot, dissipated into smoke. The illusory cloud universe chess swayed and trembled violently. It broke into pieces and disappeared into specks of fluorescent light. How dare you destroy my illusory cloud universe chess? Autumn, guest of the Wudong, narrowed his eyes, a cold light flickering in his eyes. Su Yu looked at him calmly. First, put away that disgusting trick of yours. Second, I never agreed to join forces with you. Please don't take me into your own hands. Third, the one who wants to kill you is clearly the Pathmaster. Instead of blaming him, you blame me? These three sentences were concise and comprehensive. They not only pointed out the reason behind it, but also made clear Su Yu's position. People with different beliefs cannot make plans together. Since you do not want to join forces with us, please leave. Autumn, guest of the Wudong, was like a lord giving orders. Su Yu shook his head. He did not want to have anything to do with them anymore. Although there was no clear evidence, his intuition told him that the beautiful woman in the palace gown had a profound purpose in sowing discord in the manor. If he were to clash with them now, he might fall into their trap. Even if they joined forces, they would not be able to break the heart in a short time. He might as well take this opportunity to see if he could collect some of the power of heaven and earth for his own use. He took a step out of the ground, away from where the heart was. Watching him leave, Autumn Guest of the Wutong murmured disdainfully, "I was really worried that you had some skills. It seems like I was overthinking." In his opinion, Su Yu's carefree departure was a sign that his threat had worked. He was making things difficult for Su Yu with the intention of driving him away. Otherwise, with a person highly valued by the Pathmaster here, who would own the broken love flute after it was discovered. Come, break the heart. Autumn Guest of the Wudong looked hopeful. On the other side, Su Yu came to a place where the power of heaven and earth was relatively thick. Masses of mixed power of heaven and earth appeared one after another. He tried to pull a mass of power of heaven and earth into his palm. Seeing that it did not resist, he absorbed it into his body. However, after the power entered his body, it flowed out naturally and did not remain. After thinking for a while, Su Yu was unwilling to give up. He tried many methods, but without exception, he could not retain the power of heaven and earth in this place. They were like unripe fruits that cannot be plucked. Just as he was feeling helpless, one of the Buddhist beads on his wrist became slightly hot. He scanned it with his soul. It was the evil dragon that he had taken away from the Dayu Empire. "What's the matter?" Su Yu asked as the evil dragon kept hitting the barrier of the Buddha Pearl space. The evil dragon's expression was excited as he said, "Master, I want to recover my peak strength as a 4-crown emperor. Please grant me a chance." With Su Yu's current cultivation, he was not afraid of the evil dragon recovering to its peak. "What did you sense?" he asked. The evil dragon said carefully, "Outside should be natural heaven and earth power, right? If you don't need it, or if you have extra, please bestow it to me. I'm willing to do anything to repay you." Su Yu sighed and said, "Then, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. The power of heaven and earth here is still accumulating and has yet to erupt, so it can't be absorbed." I can absorb it." Su Yu's eyes shone, and he immediately released it. "Let's try it." The evil dragon's body had been suppressed by the 7 ancient swords for a long time. The 7 holes, which were so deep that bones could be seen, had yet to recover. The evil dragon twisted its body, its eyes filled with excitement. It carefully looked at Su Yu, and after receiving his approval, it opened its mouth and took a deep breath. A large amount of the power of heaven and earth gathered around it and entered its body. The power in its body was about to overflow. Suddenly, the black scales on the surface of the evil dragon's body expanded rapidly, layer after layer. The dragon's unique dragon aura was released, forming a thin layer of latex. 20% of the overflowing power of heaven and earth couldn't pass through the layers of scales, and another 30% couldn't pass through the thin layer of dragon aura. In the end, 50% of the power of heaven and earth remained in its body, and the evil dragon digested it for its own use. Its cultivation rose rapidly, and it reached the level of a 3-crown emperor in a short while. An hour later, its aura rose to the level of a 4-crown emperor. "Ha ha! I've finally recovered." The evil dragon laughed heartily, his laughter filled with helplessness and sorrow. As he laughed, he looked at Su Yu, his eyes filled with boundless gratitude. "I can't thank you enough. I'm a member of the Dragon Clan, and I always repay favors. If you need me to do anything for you, I will go through fire and water without hesitation." As an evil dragon, he hid his evil aura, and he was still quite decent, so he wasn't that repulsive. "You don't have to go through fire and water, but can you tell me how much more power of heaven and earth can you absorb?" The evil dragon pointed at the power of heaven and earth in front of him. "Are you still willing to let me continue absorbing? The power of heaven and earth is the best nourishment for the Dragon Clan. My cultivation might increase infinitely. Answer me." Suyu said calmly. Even if the evil dragon became a pathmaster, he wouldn't be worried. In theory, I can absorb the power of Tao in your body. The evil dragon was an old monster that had lived for countless years, and he understood Suyu's intention. He wanted to refine his Tao body. Suyu's eyes lit up. Then what are you waiting for? The evil dragon nodded and continued to absorb the power of heaven and earth without hesitation. A large amount of power of heaven and earth was continuously gathering into the dragon pearl. The entire giant python was weakening at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye. Perhaps it had sensed the danger it was in, but the giant python squirmed a little, showing signs of awakening. The beautiful woman in the palace dress raised her eyebrows. Sister, the situation isn't good, Shu Xianduo said. We have already lost the evil Emperor's supreme scripture. If we also lose the love-severing flute, I'm afraid that the thing that the young master is looking for will really be lost. The beautiful woman's eyes flickered with wisdom as she said softly, I believe that Suyu has the ability to obtain the love-severing flute. Shu Xianduo had a question in her heart. If Suyu had the ability to obtain the love-severing flute, why did he still listen to her sister's orders? However, her sister was a pathmaster, so she didn't dare to question her. Inside the giant python's body, Wudong Xiao and the others also felt the strange changes. The power of heaven and earth in the surroundings became restless. Their hearts, which had been besieged, began to beat faster. The power of heaven and earth is about to awaken. Wudong Xiaoku's heart was in her throat. She swallowed a bottle of potion to replenish her power and shouted in a low voice, Soon continue. Looking at the heart, a deep gash had already appeared. It was only a matter of a few attacks before it was completely pierced through. Everyone's spirits were lifted. They all took out their trump cards and decided to put them to good use. Once, twice, thrice. Finally, before the power of heaven and earth was awakened, the heart was destroyed by them. With a cracking sound, a corner of the heart peeled off, revealing a crimson long flute. As soon as this object appeared, several sharp whistling sounds could be heard. It was the other people who were releasing their trump cards. Chapter 2189. Autumn Guest of Wudong was already prepared. He turned around and took out a hidden shield. The shield split into tens of thousands of shield shadows, absorbing all the attacks. We are all from a number 1 peerless family, and you dare to plot against me? Autumn Guest of Wudong revealed an expression of anger. Autumn Guest of Wudong, stop pretending. You pushed out young Master Wuchun. Didn't you want to chase away your strongest competitor? Do you think we are fools and can't see? A red-robed woman sneered. Moreover, we want to kill you, but do you not want to kill us? There's only one emotion-severing flute, and we have many people. You are the strongest among us. In theory, the emotion-severing flute will naturally be snatched by you, so we have no choice but to work together. No one was a fool, and they all understood the reason. Seeking death, Autumn Guest of Wudong saw that everything was exposed and did not waste any more words. He did not have any feelings for fellow clansmen and ruthlessly threw out a high-grade talisman. However, he retreated and reached out to grab the broken love flute. Not so easy. The red-robed woman raised her hand and released a small bird, which turned into a bolt of lightning that struck the back of Autumn Guest's hand. His entire body was numb, and he reflexively pulled his arm back. Taking this opportunity, several people attacked together. Autumn Guest of Wudong was strong, but how could he be careless when facing several people alone? He had to fight with all his strength. Both sides fought inside the giant python. All kinds of law chains flew, and the sound of collisions rang out. Both sides had the goal of killing each other, and their eyes were bloodshot. After a long battle, Autumn Guest of Wudong was covered in injuries, while the other side suffered heavy casualties. The red-robed woman in the lead had lost an arm, and because of the severity of the injury, she could not recover. Her expression was dark, and she gritted her teeth. Autumn Guest of Wudong had actually hidden a lot of his strength. His true strength was probably not weaker than the main factions by Yun and Red Immortal. Go! The red-robed woman said, knowing that they could not snatch it, they could only escape. Want to leave? Oomph. Autumn Guest of Wutong clenched his hand, and the 10 beads exploded at the same time, spraying out large amounts of unknown quicksand that instantly submerged the people. Die. Then he chanted an incantation, and the quicksand actually twisted crazily like a living thing, crushing all the people inside it. Shocking blood flowed all over the ground, dyeing the quicksand red. After confirming that they were all dead, Autumn Guest of the Wutong tree panted heavily. Exhausted, he turned around to retrieve the broken love flute. However, the scene that he saw when he turned around caused his eyes to almost pop out of their sockets. At his heart, a person was standing there, playing with a broken love flute. Put it down. Autumn Wutong was so polite that she wanted to vomit blood. He had painstakingly opened his heart and killed all the competitors at the same time. But in the end, young Master Dustless had come and easily taken away the broken love flute. Do you have to bully me like this? Suyu fiddled with it for a moment, then said calmly, the flute is pretty good, but I wonder how it tastes. As Autumn Guest of Wutong stared in bewilderment, Suyu opened his mouth and ate the broken love flute. Yes, he crushed it in one bite and swallowed it. Why, you're crazy, Wutong Autumn Guest said in shock. The broken love flute was his only chance of survival. So why did he crush it and eat it? Suyu's expression was indifferent as he said, if I don't eat it, am I supposed to use it to defect to the enemy? From the very beginning, Suyu had never intended to give the broken love flute to the beautiful woman in the palace gown. Not only did she plot against him and the people of the #1 peerless family, but she was also forcing him to take something. Suyu did not have such a good temper. Do you know what you have done? Autumn Guest of Wutong roared in exasperation. Suyu wiped his mouth. The taste was not flattering, and he really did not know how Xiao Dai could eat it. Looking at Autumn Guest of Wutong, Suyu said lightly, of course I know, and I know more than you. You know more than me. So you must have known that you would die a horrible death, right? Autumn Guest of Wutong hated Suyu to the core at that moment. A murderous aura shot out of his eyes, as if it had materialized. However, Suyu was not in a hurry. He performed space folding, turning himself into a speck of dust as he said, what I know more than you is that this broken love flute is actually the source of the giant python's spiritual intelligence. Once the broken love flute is broken, the giant python will definitely awaken, and the power of heaven and earth will erupt. As if to prove his words, the surrounding power of heaven and earth rapidly converged into one. Waves of destruction rippled out in all directions. Many of the geniuses in the giant python's body were shocked, and they all fled from the giant python. Autumn Guest of Wutong was furious, but he had no time to look for Suyu, so he fled in fear. However, he was the closest to the giant python's heart, and the waves of destruction were the most powerful. Before he could escape more than a few steps, he was immediately swept away by a wave of destruction, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Above, the beautiful eyes of the beautiful woman in the palace gown reflected the roaring and twisting giant python, and her heart sank to the bottom. I failed. The beautiful woman in the palace gown clenched her teeth, her eyes filled with unwillingness. Suyu, whom she had placed so much hope in, had actually failed. Shu Xianduo sighed. Even her sister could make a mistake sometimes. Let's go quickly, Shu Xianduo reminded her. No matter how unwilling the beautiful woman in the palace gown was, she could only flee. However, the giant python seemed to have been angered, and it stared at the beautiful woman in the palace gown, who had the highest cultivation among everyone present. The latter's heart shrank, and she hurriedly stepped out of the underground world, standing above the desert. But before she could do anything, a beam of light shot out from the bottom of the desert and struck the beautiful woman in the palace gown. The latter gave a muffled groan, and dense cracks appeared on her Taoist body, like a porcelain doll. She had dodged in time, and she had only been grazed by the residual force. Otherwise, it would not have been as simple as cracking. Having escaped, The beautiful woman in the palace gown immediately flickered into the distance. She watched as the giant python rushed out of the ground, then erupted into the nothingness outside of civilization. When everything calmed down, she revolved the power of the Pathmaster in her body with great difficulty to recover her body. Her eyes narrowed, and she immediately burrowed into the ground, looking for the whereabouts of the broken love flute. But she found nothing. Did it shatter at the moment when the power of heaven and earth awakened? The beautiful woman in the palace gown was full of unwillingness. Just as she was about to say something, she suddenly found a person who had fallen into a deep pit. It was Autumn Guest of the Wutong Tree, who had survived the disaster. And he even had a Taoist body? The beautiful woman in the palace gown hooked her finger, pulling the dying Autumn Guest of the Wutong Tree over. What happened? Why did the power of heaven and earth awaken for no reason? Autumn Guest of the Wutong Tree was terrified, and he did not dare to hide anything. What? He ate the broken love flute? The beautiful woman in the palace gown was shocked. She knew very well that it was an object close to the fairy embryo of a Taoist artifact, and it was unusually hard. What followed was anger. She had expected Su Yu to have the ability to obtain the broken love flute, but she had not expected him to be unwilling to give it to him. Why did he do that? The beautiful woman in the palace gown's pretty eyes were filled with anger for the first time. At that moment, an indifferent voice reverberated through the ground. You are still asking why you are injured now. Chapter 2190. The beautiful woman turned her head to look, and her pupils constricted slightly. She saw a speck of dust appear from nothing, and it folded into a complete Mr. Wuchen. His eyes suddenly turned sharp. You mean, you're deliberately awakening the power of the world to hurt me? Su Yu shook his dust-covered robe and said calmly, To be precise, I wanted to kill you, but you were lucky that you were only injured. He had wanted to borrow the power of heaven and earth from the very beginning. It was a pity that this woman had escaped, and only her body was seriously injured. The beautiful woman stared at Su Yu's indifferent expression, and she felt a chill in her heart. This lad never showed his emotions. He obviously wanted to kill her, but he never revealed any murderous intent. Even now, when they were face to face, she didn't sense any murderous intent. Many old monsters who had lived for countless years were like this, right? She had a feeling that Su Yu couldn't be controlled, and not only that, but he was also extremely dangerous. After all, she was a pathmaster who had experienced many storms and had vast knowledge. She immediately realized that a person like Su Yu couldn't be used by her. Moreover, she could see that in the near future, Su Yu would be a threat to the second peerless family. A wisp of weak, murderous intent lingered in her eyes. Then I have to admire your courage. You knew that I would only be injured, but you still dared to show yourself. The beautiful woman slowly released her domain. Her domain was a dreamy peach blossom forest, which was filled with the enchanting fragrance of pink flowers. Once one was enveloped by it, he would immediately sink into it and be unable to extricate himself. Spring slumber. The beautiful woman immediately released her domain. With her, as the center, the domain spread rapidly in a circular shape. It would only take a moment to cover the entire ground. Theoretically, there was no suspense in the battle between a pathmaster and a half-step pathmaster. Even though Su Yu gave her a sense of danger, she was still exhausted, so she couldn't fight him. Su Yu's eyes were calm as he calmly looked at the incoming wave. He took out a leaf unhurriedly and said, Since I dare to show myself, how could I not be prepared? He threw the leaf, and a domain was released from it. Inside the domain, warhorses neighed, and experts were as numerous as clouds. It was filled with fierce, murderous intent, and it tore apart a part of the sky. This leaf was one of the 3 leaves given to him by the Tianqin Pathmaster of the Sanyang Yellow Mirror Palace. It contained his strongest attack. As a life-saving measure, Su Yu had never used it. The battlefield domain rotated and sliced apart Spring Sleep domain. The dormant Spring domain flew out and splashed in all directions. The difference between the 2 domains was obvious. The Spring Sleep domain was a support domain, while the battlefield domain was an offensive domain. The beautiful woman's expression changed drastically as she watched a long gash being torn open in her domain and locked onto by her opponent's battlefield domain. At the same time, he took out a defensive Tao artifact, Immortal Embryo. It was a silk-like ribbon. It flew out unhurriedly, wrapping around the battlefield domain. Through its continuous rotation, it disintegrated the battlefield domain bit by bit. Finally, when the battlefield domain reached the beautiful woman in the palace dress, there was only a faint trace of it left. The beautiful woman only managed to catch her breath after she forced a mouthful of Daelord's blood out of him. She grabbed the Pathmaster's blood and stared at Suyu, her eyes filled with deep fear. Just as he was about to say something, Suyu suddenly took out 2 leaves at the same time and was about to throw them over. The beautiful woman's eyelids twitched. 1 leaf had almost threatened her life, let alone 2. Even the defensive Tao artifact, Immortal Embryos, were unable to continue. "I'll remember you, Mr. Wuchen. We'll meet again." The beautiful woman in the palace dress was filled with hatred. If he hadn't been injured by the power of heaven and earth, she wouldn't have ended up in such a state. Once her Tao body recovered, she might not be afraid of the domain within the 2 leaves. With a grunt, the beautiful woman grabbed Shu Xianduo and left. Before leaving, she reached out to grab the Tao artifact, Immortal Embryo. However, her palm was empty. When she looked again, she saw that Suyu had moved it into his hand with the power of space. "You!" The beautiful woman's eyes were burning with anger. She wanted to snatch it back, but she was afraid of the 2 leaves in Suyu's hand. She had no choice but to give up. She had been hiding under the noses of the 3 elders of the number 1 peerless family, and nothing had happened to her. Now, she had been defeated by a half-step Daolord kid. Even the defensive Tao artifact, Immortal Embryo, in her hand had been snatched away by her opponent. To her, it was a great humiliation. "Just you wait," the beautiful woman in the palace dress said ruthlessly before leaving. So you couldn't catch up with her, so he could only watch her escape. Weighing the ribbon in his hand, Suyu was quite satisfied with it. The leaf had not been wasted, and he had obtained a defensive Tao artifact, Immortal Embryo. Suyu had experienced its defensive power just now, and it could completely withstand an attack of the Daolord level. Primordial Sky, Spirit Ribbon. Suyu murmured softly as he put the item away. Looking around at the survivors around them, the way they looked at Suyu had changed. A peer who had an attack of the Daolord level could kill them as easily as slaughtering chickens. The others didn't feel anything, as they were just in awe. Autumn Guest of the Wutong Tree was full of fear. He lowered his head, and his mind was in turmoil. At this moment, he was extremely regretful. If he had known that Suyu was so powerful, he wouldn't have been disrespectful to him. Suyu glanced at him indifferently, then left expressionlessly. If he killed him now, wouldn't he be giving them an excuse? The rest of the survivors were still in shock, and they all returned to the town. However, they found something unusual from afar. The town was filled with smoke, and there were countless casualties. A group of martial artists from the first peerless family collected the corpses with mournful expressions. What happened? Autumn Guest of the Wutong Tree met a familiar youth and immediately asked. The other party was overjoyed to see that he and many other outstanding youths were still alive. He said, "You are still alive? That's great. We all thought that you had died in the rebellion." They had been gone for several days, and their whereabouts were a mystery. Everyone thought that they had met a tragic end. Rebellion. Autumn Guest of the Wutong Tree's heart tightened. Are they the remnants of the second peerless family? Yes. There are tens of thousands of remnants of the second peerless family hidden in the town. 3 days ago, they suddenly launched a surprise attack. We were unprepared, and the casualties were extremely tragic. The group of youths who rushed over were shocked when they learned of the incident. Tens of thousands? Where did so many come from? If the town's inspection was so strict, how could there be so many remnants of the second peerless family? It was completely incomprehensible. Some of the guests have been bribed by the people of the second peerless family, so they cheated during the entrance inspection and let many of the people of the second peerless family in. Hearing this, Many of the youths were furious. Among our guests, besides Lu Xian, there are other traitors? After understanding the rest of the details, they couldn't suppress their anger. There were tens of thousands of casualties this time. Among them, the more outstanding members of the younger generation suffered the most serious casualties. Chapter 2191. This was done deliberately by the second exceptional family, specifically targeting the outstanding youngsters of the first exceptional family. After he was done, he immediately retreated back to the second peerless clan. Su Yu's heart was as clear as a mirror. The second peerless clan's ambition was not the sky pure mind, but the demonic emperor of the highest scripture and the broken love flute. Therefore, when the time was right, there was no need to hide anymore, and they would launch a sneak attack at the same time. I didn't expect a foreign minister to seek refuge with the second most powerful family, Su Yu thought to himself. He knew that Lu Xian was innocent, but he didn't expect that there was really a traitor. However, none of this mattered to Su Yu. Go and report to the Windflower Clan's elder as soon as possible. If they know that you're still alive, they'll definitely be overjoyed. The group of people in front of them could be said to be the strongest group in the branch. They were either Daoified souls or Daoified bodies. They didn't suffer any losses, which was a blessing in disguise. Su Yu nodded, then went to the station with the other young elites. The three elders were discussing something urgently. Seeing that Su Yu and the others had returned, the Fenghua Dao master smiled. You came back just in time. Get ready. Everyone is to withdraw from the heavenly pure mine. Retreat? Many young elites couldn't understand. The Fenghua clan elder said solemnly, "This is an order from the patriarch after we communicated with him. For the sake of safety, all of you youngsters should temporarily stop all mining activities and return to your families immediately." They were unwilling. They hadn't even dug up the sky's pure dust, yet they had to retreat? Su Yu furrowed his brows deeply. If he retreated now, he would miss the chance to meet Tian Jingchen. The orders of the clan leader cannot be disobeyed. You have 2 hours to prepare. When you are ready, I will personally escort you to the top of the 10,000 sect beast and return to the #1 clan. So urgent? It seemed that the situation was not optimistic. The people from the second most exceptional clan could attack again at any time. Everyone had no choice but to go back and pack their things. So you did not have many things to pack up. Instead, he found a quiet place and, with a clench of his fingers, extracted the powder of the broken love flute that he had eaten from his body and gathered it in his palm. Time reversal. He activated a small area of time reversal, allowing the broken love flute to return to the time before it was eaten. Now, no one should know that the emotion-severing flute still existed in this world. He looked at it for a while and tried to play. In the end, Su Yu, who did not know anything about music, was able to play a soul-stirring tune. It was beautiful and pleasant to listen to. It didn't sound like an ordinary voice. Strange. Su Yu was surprised. He tried a few more times and realized that no matter how he played it, the same music would appear. The entire flute could only play one tune. The beautiful woman in palace attire has been plotting this for a long time. So, she couldn't have done it just for a song, right? Su Yu rolled his eyes and immediately realized where the problem lay. He played it again and wrote down the score of the entire song on a piece of paper. Su Yu, who did not understand music, could not see anything wrong with it. If it was given to someone who was proficient in music, he might be able to discover the problem with the music score. 2 hours passed after he was done. Everyone gathered in the main hall again. Dao Lord Fenghua was already waiting in the courtyard, and she was staring at the spatial barrier that had cracked open like a spiderweb. Wanzhong Beast was about to arrive. Don't be discouraged. Once we've stabilized the crippled Sky Mountain, you'll have another chance to return, Taoist Master Fenghua said indifferently. His words of consolation could only be taken as consolation. Even with 3 Dao Lords keeping watch, they were still unable to guarantee their safety. Could it be that they would send 4 or 5 Dao Lords here in the future? Obviously not. It would be a long time before they had the chance to come again. Crack! With the sound of space shattering, Wanzhongshou's head emerged from within and was about to retreat immediately. Let's go! Taoist Master Feng Hua took the lead and flew up, and the rest of the people followed her. Before long, everyone began to travel through the ultra-long distance space with complicated feelings. After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, they were still traveling. Suyu furrowed his brows. Something was wrong. When they arrived, it could be said that they had teleported. It had only been a cup of tea's time. Now, it was more than twice as long. Just as he was feeling bewildered, the space in front of him suddenly brightened. It was a sign that they had traveled to the end of the space. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. When Wan Zhongsho stopped, they jumped out of the space tunnel and came to the outside world. What came into view was an emerald green lakeside. Where's this place? It's so unfamiliar. They imagined that they would return directly to the mansion of the king. Taoist Master Feng Hua stood by the lakeside and said leisurely, "It's an ordinary forest near the mansion of the number 1 peerless family. Wait patiently for a moment. I've already informed the people of the mansion to come and take you back." With the Taoist master's guarantee, the master's doubts were dispelled. They sat down with their legs crossed and relaxed, talking and discussing with each other. Only Suyu secretly activated the heavenly eyes to observe the situation from top to bottom. At the same time, he was vigilant. Something was wrong. It couldn't be what Taoist Master Feng Hua had explained. The place they were heading to was not the mansion of the number 1 peerless family, but another place. Just as the heavenly eyes opened, Suyu's pupils constricted fiercely. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Senior, I have something to do. I want to act alone, so I won't trouble the people of the mansion to come and pick me up." Taoist Master Feng Hua looked over and asked indifferently, "Is it very important?" "Yes, it is," Suyu said concisely. Taoist Master Feng Hua did not say anything and let him go. She said, "Be careful on the road." Suyu immediately took the lead and left. Seeing him leave, Autumn Guest of Wudong heaved a sigh of relief and snorted. "You're smart enough to know how to hide from me." Being at the Broken Sky Mountain, Autumn Guest of Wudong could not do anything to Suyu. But when he returned to the mansion, Suyu was nothing. He was ordered to kneel and would never dare to stand. Unexpectedly, Suyu slipped away at the last minute, causing his plan to fail. After Suyu walked away from them unhurriedly, he immediately teleported and skimmed into the distance. His face was grave. However, just as he took a step forward, he found that he was standing on the same spot. He was still at the edge of the small forest and had not gone far. He stopped in his tracks, and his eyes became fierce and sharp. He said indifferently, "There's only you and me, so there's no need to hide anymore." Only a strong Pathmaster could forcibly pull him back from his leap. And in front of him, there was only one strong Pathmaster, Taoist Master Feng Hua. Swish! A black shadow blurred before Suyu's eyes, and the black-robed Taoist Master Feng Hua appeared. The only female Pathmaster. She looked down at Suyu from above, sizing him up curiously. She said, "You knew there was something wrong with me?" As soon as she said that, the identity of Taoist Master Feng Hua was obvious. Suyu said, to be able to let tens of thousands of remnants of the number 2 peerless family enter, and to allow an enemy Pathmaster to live freely in the city for decades, how could a mere guest be able to hide the truth? There must be someone even more important. Among the 3 elders, maybe one of them is a traitor. Suyu said, "Only now am I sure that you are the traitor, because you brought us to the territory of the number 2 peerless family." The forest that the heavenly eyes saw looked different. Chapter 2192. Beyond the forest and the lake was a boundless desert. The place they were in was actually just an oasis in the desert. In the entire 7 absolute civilizations, only the territories of the 2nd and 3rd absolute families had such a terrain. Taoist Master Feng Hua lied to them that this place was the number 1 absolute civilization. There was no need to doubt her stance. "You're smart, really." The Feng Hua Tao Lord clasped her hands behind her back as she looked at Suyu. "I've hidden myself so well. For so many years, the family master has never suspected me. I didn't expect that you would be able to discern my identity." Suyu's wisdom and meticulous observation had won her sincere praise even though she was his enemy. His intelligence wasn't inferior to many Tao lords. Looks like bringing you back was the wisest decision, Taoist Master Feng Hua said slowly. Originally, she favored Autumn Guest of Wudong the most. She wanted to send an extremely outstanding talent to the second peerless clan. Now, it seemed that Su Yu's intelligence might even surpass Autumn Guest of the Wudong tree. Su Yu secretly took out a leaf and was ready to activate it at any time. Unlike the heavily injured, beautiful woman, the Windflower Tao Lord was at her peak condition. A single leaf might not be able to do anything to her, unless he took out the other two leaves at the same time. Shwa. Suddenly, the aura around them froze, and an oppressive aura assaulted them. A 10-meter-tall being clad in pitch-black demonic armor appeared next to Tao Lord Windflower. It had 8 arms, a tall and sturdy body, and was exceptionally ferocious. He was also a Tao Lord. Feng Hua, why aren't you going back? The number 1 Peerless Family's Wanzhong show is about to arrive, said the devil-armored being. Taoist Master Feng Hua looked at him respectfully and said, Lord Mo Yuan, this child wanted to escape, so I came here to stop him. That's why I delayed him for a while. Escape? Tao Master Mo Yuan sized Su Yu up with a shrewd look. You do seem extraordinary. All right, you can go now. Leave this place to me. Tao Lord Feng Hua was responsible for tricking all the outstanding members of the number 1 Peerless family into coming over. Then, she would return and continue working as a spy. Su Yu and the others were taken away by Tao Master Mo Yuan. Taoist Master Feng Hua nodded slightly and returned to where she came from. The space that had just healed was once again filled with cracks. Su Yu's heart tightened when he saw this scene through the heavenly eyes. That was the only chance to return to the number 1 Peerless family. Right now, he was viewed as a member of the number 1 Absolute clan. Once he fell into the second Absolute clan, he would be imprisoned for a very long time until he reached the second Absolute clan. This was not the situation he wanted. Kid, accept your fate, Tao Lord Mo Yuan said. Su Yu interrupted him and said, I will walk back myself. He silently returned to the small forest and met up with Autumn Guest of Wudong and the others. Tao Master Mo Yuan revealed a faint smile. At least you know your limits. Autumn Guest of the Wudong tree frowned slightly, not understanding why Su Yu had returned. Did he not understand that returning to the number 1 Peerless clan was Autumn Guest of the Wudong tree's territory? Hey! Autumn Guest of Wudong was about to say something when he saw the demonic armor path master following behind Su Yu. He was stunned for a moment. Who are you? Just as his voice fell, the other party laughed wildly. Welcome to the second Peerless family. Number 2 Peerless family? Most of them were completely dumbfounded, and they all looked toward Tao Master Feng Hua. The latter was expressionless, with his back facing them, waiting for the Wanzhong beast to appear. Those who were slightly smarter immediately sensed that something was wrong. Crack! At that moment, the space split open, and the Wanzhong beast poked his head out and was about to shrink back. Tao Master Feng Hua jumped onto the Wanzhong beast alone, not looking at anyone behind her. Elder Feng Hua betrayed us. Finally, all the young talents present realized what was going on. Some of them tried to fly away from the Wanzhong beast. However, Tao Master Feng Hua waved a robe behind her mercilessly, releasing a domain to block their way. She said indifferently, Stay here with peace of mind. The second Peerless family will not treat you badly. No, the young talents were forced to wait outside, and their hearts fell into a cold, pitch-black abyss. They had been abandoned. Haha, you're all talents. As long as you are willing to surrender, we, the second Peerless family, will not treat you badly. Tao Master Mo Yuan's laughter came from behind them. Su Yu's eyes flickered with a shrewd light, and he did not make a move. Until the moment when the Wanzhong beast completely entered the space, he suddenly attacked. Bloodshed Domain. The leaf hidden in his hand was activated without warning, instantly shattering the domain of Tao Master Feng Hua. Then, he took the opportunity to fly over. The rest of the people reacted quickly and followed Su Yu to chase after the Wanzhong beast. Once the Wanzong beast began to travel through space, even strong Dao masters would not dare to move recklessly on his body. Otherwise, if they alarmed the Wanzong beast and he randomly chose a direction to escape in, they were likely to be taken by the Wanzong beast to a distant foreign realm that they would never be able to return from. As long as they stepped on it, even Dao Master Feng Hua could do nothing about it. However, even though Dao Master Feng Hua could not stop them, Dao Master Mo Yuan could. Demon shakes the world. He snorted coldly when he saw that. A huge demonic shadow domain descended with a loud rumble. A demonic shadow that looked like a giant ape descended from the sky, pounding the ground with its fists. Many of the young talents present felt as if they had been hit by civilization. They spat out divine blood, and some of them passed out on the spot. However, 2 of them managed to resist it and took the opportunity to step on the Wanzong beast tail. One of them was Suyu. The Taoist body of the human demon appeared in front of him, and he used it to resist the attack of the domain. The other one was Autumn Guest of Wudong. He held a broken bronze statue in his hand, and a broken domain was released from it, which barely offset most of the domain attack. When Dao Master Mo Yuan rushed over, the Wanzong beast had already stepped into the space. He wanted to intervene, but he was worried that he would alarm the Wanzong beast and implicate Dao Master Feng Hua, so he could only swallow his hatred and give up. That brat's temperament is simply terrifying. Dao Master Mo Yuan pondered. Facing 2 Dao Masters at the same time, he was calm and composed, and he could even endure it. He clearly had such a powerful leaf, but he had been enduring it all this time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike suddenly in search of a chance of survival. I hope Feng Hua can subdue him. Such a talent is rare. In the space, Dao Master Feng Hua's eyes were filled with icy light. She jumped between Su Yu and Autumn Guest of Wudong and said in a menacing tone, "Good, very good. I wanted to give you a chance to achieve meteoric success, but you insisted on choosing the road to hell." How could she tolerate 2 insiders returning to the number 1 peerless family? Their identities would definitely be exposed. Autumn Guest of Wudong felt a chill run down his spine, and his heart sank to the bottom. The Wanzong beast had stepped into the space, but how to return alive was the real test. The broken domain in his bronze statue could not withstand the Dao Master Feng Hua at all. Suyu, however, was calm and composed. He said indifferently, "You can strike now." The Dao Master Feng Hua's eyes narrowed. If she could, she would certainly strike now. However, she had to weigh the pros and cons of the Wanzong beast. "Since you don't dare, please shut up and save your energy." Suyu sat down calmly and took out the Origin Sky spiritual belt. The defensive power of this item was impressive, so he naturally had to refine it as soon as possible. Seeing this item, the Dao Master Feng Hua's pupils shrank. The Origin Sky spiritual belt. As a member of the number 2 peerless family, she had no reason not to recognize the revenge of the beautiful woman in the palace gown. "How did it end up in your hands?" "She gave it to me," Suyu said indifferently. The Dao Master Feng Hua's expression changed constantly. Of course, she knew the truth behind Autumn Guest of Wudong and the others being tricked by the beautiful woman in the palace gown. When she found out that Suyu, Autumn Guest of Wudong, and the others had returned alive, she initially thought that something had happened to the beautiful woman in the palace gown. Now, it seemed that her guess was correct. Even the fairy embryo of a Taoist artifact, the Origin Sky spiritual belt, had fallen into this person's hands. The murderous intent in her eyes intensified. Crack! After an unknown amount of time, the space in front of her suddenly split open. Impressively, the Wanzong beast had returned to the side of another Wanzong beast. A familiar aura of the number 1 peerless family assaulted her senses. The Dao Master Feng Hua jumped out first and immediately released a powerful domain, striking back at the Wanzong beast. In this way, Su Yu and Autumn Guest of Wudong were in a desperate situation. If it didn't come out, the frightened Wanzong beast would go to an unknown distant place. "Come out and take a hit from the domain." Without hesitation, Su Yu leaped out. A ribbon, like lightning, quickly wrapped around the Dao Master Feng Hua's domain and obliterated it. Autumn Guest of Wudong immediately released the domain in the bronze statue and took the opportunity to attack the Dao Master Feng Hua. No matter what kind of grudge there was between her and Su Yu, they now had a common enemy. The Dao Master Feng Hua was furious. With a backhand slap, she gathered another domain and blasted both of them away. Get lost! Su Yu had the Origin Sky spiritual belt to protect himself, so he was only slightly injured. Autumn Guest of Wudong was not so lucky, and the bronze statue in his hand was shattered. Fortunately, he had successfully transformed into a body, so his body was not seriously injured. Umph! The Dao Master Feng Hua clutched his throat and subdued him. Then, she quickly chased after Su Yu. Su Yu took out a leaf, sighed inwardly, and threw it out with a backhand. A domain containing a fierce attack instantly shrouded behind him. The Dao Master Feng Hua's face changed fiercely, and she immediately displayed her own domain to resist. The two domains collided, and after a moment of stalemate, they were both destroyed. The Dao Master Feng Hua waved away the remnants of the domain in the sky and looked around. However, there was no trace of Su Yu. There was not even a trace of his aura left in the atmosphere. She stood where she was, narrowed her eyes, and said, "Mr. Wuchen, I know you are nearby. If possible, I hope we can talk. I know your background, and you're not a member of the number 1 Peerless family. I am a spy in the number 1 Peerless family, and there is no conflict of interest with you, is there? As long as you don't expose my identity, not only will I not kill you, but I will also give you many benefits. How about it?" As she spoke, she sensed the fluctuations in the atmosphere around her. At the same time, she secretly condensed a domain in her sleeves. If there was any abnormality, she would attack immediately. She would not put her fate in the hands of Junior. However, the surroundings were quiet, and there was no movement. After half an hour, the Dao Master Feng Hua frowned. Has he gone far? With deep anxiety, the Dao Master Feng Hua searched in other directions. However, after a cup of tea's time, her figure suddenly appeared in the quiet vicinity, and she said exasperatedly, "He is really gone. One night watch today." Recently, she had missed 3 night watch periods, and she would start to make up for it tomorrow. 1 night watch period at 8 in the morning, 2 night watch periods at noon, and 2 night watch periods at 6 in the evening. Chapter 2194. He didn't have any leaves. However, he still had 20,000 drops of the Pathmaster's blood from the Purple Cloud Pathmaster and the White Bone Pathmaster, as well as a Heavenly Law Death Eye. Unless one of them had a cultivation close to the sinful lady's level, he would be killed by it. In the worst-case scenario, he would scatter a handful of world-destroying dust and sink the entire 7 unique civilizations, regardless of the lives of the innocent people. While he was thinking, a wave of air surged from afar. Several Pathmasters and Biyun Hongxian, led by the golden-eyed Lang Jun, arrived. The Feng Hua Pathmaster was the most proactive. She snorted coldly. "Demon, you killed innocent people, and you deserve to die. Let me take you." What she wanted the most was to silence Su Yu, so that he would not speak a single word. However, someone was faster than her. The golden-eyed Lang Jun took out a golden bell and instantly trapped Su Yu in it. Strangely, Su Yu didn't resist. Instead, he was very calm. "Do you want to say something?" The golden-eyed Lang Jun came to the front of the golden bell with his hands behind his back. Su Yu stood with his hands behind his back and said lightly, "You are not as smart as you think. Is that so? But I caught you. That's enough." The golden-eyed Lang Jun said lightly. At the same time, he took out a golden blade and stared at Biyun Hongxian. "You come." Biyun Hongxian hesitated and didn't grab the blade. It was a doctrine artifact fairy embryo that could destroy a Pathmaster. If she stabbed it, Su Yu would definitely die. "You are the heir of the number 1 Peerless family. You can't be emotional, and you can't show any weakness." He seemed to be blaming Biyun Hongxian for pleading for Su Yu. Under threat, Biyun Hongxian held the blade and walked towards Su Yu step by step. She came to the front of the golden bell and said apologetically, "Su Rushu, don't blame me. I was forced to do this." As she spoke, she stabbed the blade into the golden bell, aiming for Su Yu's vital part. The Fenghua Pathmaster saw this, and her lips curled into a cold smile. The golden-eyed Lang Jun was expressionless as he watched Su Yu take the fatal blow. However, right at that moment, Su Yu suddenly opened his mouth and bit the sharp blade. With a crack, the sharp blade of the immortal embryo Dao artifact was bitten off. At the same time, Su Yu bit open the golden bell with his mouth, extended his hand, and twisted Biyun Hongxian's neck at lightning speed. No one had expected such a sudden turn of events. From the moment Su Yu crushed the sharp blade to the moment he gripped Biyun Hongxian, only a split second had passed. "You dare!" The golden pupil scholar glared at him angrily. Su Yu's expression was indifferent. "Since you want to kill me, why wouldn't I dare?" He was about to pinch him to death. "Stop!" With a wave of his hand, the golden-eyed playboy kept the golden bell and said in a deep voice, "Su Rushu, I can let you go, but you can't hurt a single hair on my daughter's head. Otherwise, you won't be able to escape no matter what." Su Yu said, "Give me your battleship." Golden-eyed gentleman hesitated for a moment. That battleship was the only heavenly legacy battleship of the number one civilization. These warships were personally created by the Sky Legacy Emperor, and there were only 9 of them in total. 5 of them had already been destroyed, and the other 3 were in the hands of the 7th Absolute family. The last one was fortunately in the hands of the number 1 Absolute family. How could he be willing to hand over such a valuable battleship to Su Yu? The Fenghua Dao Master was anxious and said, "Master, you can't agree to it. If we keep him, we still have a chance to save our young lady. If we hand over the battleship to him, who knows where he will take our young lady?" The other Dao Masters agreed with her. They could continue to negotiate with Su Yu and strive to exchange their young lady back. "I will only give you 10 breaths' time to consider whether to agree or not." Su Yu began to count. 10. After counting, the golden-eyed gentleman said, "Give it to him." But the Fenghua Dao Master was extremely unwilling. "I said give it to him," the golden-eyed gentleman said in a more serious tone. Only then did the crowd reluctantly hand over the heavenly legacy battleship to Su Yu. Su Yu refined on the spot and familiarized himself with the operation process. He was a little dismayed to discover that the heavenly legacy battleship required the power of a Pathmaster to be activated. With the little power of a Pathmaster that he had left in the deep mountains, he could probably only activate it once. "I will let her go when it is safe. But if you dare to chase after me, then I can't guarantee anything." So you said indifferently. He subdued Biyun Hongxian and leaped onto the battleship. Then he activated it, and it disappeared without a trace. The golden-eyed gentleman's face was as gloomy as water. He said, "The rest of you, go back to the mansion and hold the fort." The Fenghua Dao Master's face was full of worry. What if Su Yu said something to the family master? At that moment, the golden-eyed gentleman suddenly said, "Fenghua, you know this man the best. Follow me and chase after him." The Fenghua Dao Master was delighted and said, "Yes, sir." The 2 of them immediately gave chase. They had thought that it would take a long time to catch up with Su Yu. Unexpectedly, they found the heavenly legacy battleship docked on the beach of the continent. Even better, Su Yu and Biyun Hongxian were among them. The Fenghua Dao Master was overjoyed. It seemed that Su Yu's power as a Pathmaster was insufficient and couldn't control the heavenly legacy battleship for too long. However, something was slightly strange. Su Yu did not do anything to Biyun Hongxian when he sensed their arrival. Instead, he only drank and chatted with them on the heavenly legacy battleship. The Fenghua Dao Master frowned slightly, vaguely sensing that something was amiss. "Su Rushu, do you have anything to say?" The golden-eyed gentleman came over with his hands clasped behind his back, his face cold. Su Yu put down the wine cup calmly and said, "What I want to say is that the Fenghua Dao Master is the spy of the 2nd Peerless family." Upon hearing that, the Fenghua Dao Master rebuked him angrily. "Nonsense! I have risked my life for the 1st Peerless family for so many years. How could I be the spy of the 2nd Peerless family? Family Master, this man is trying to sow discord. I hope you will understand." The coldness in the golden-eyed gentleman's eyes intensified. He stared at Su Yu and said placidly, "One is my family elder, and the other is the murderer who kidnapped my daughter. Who would I trust?" Upon hearing such an answer, the Feng Hua Dao master heaved a sigh of relief. The golden-eyed gentleman said again, "The one I trust is, of course, Su Rishu." The Feng Hua Dao master was stunned. She said, "Family master, you mean you trust him?" The golden-eyed gentleman turned his body sideways and stared at the Feng Hua Dao master with a complicated look in his eyes. He said, "I wanted to let you stay for a while longer, but your evil intentions have been aroused." The Feng Hua Dao master trembled slightly. She pretended to be calm and said, "Family master, what are you talking about? I don't understand." "You do. 20 years ago, you accepted 3 drops of heaven's grace dew from the young master of the second peerless family in exchange for working for the second peerless family." "I knew about this a long time ago," the golden-eyed gentleman said. "As the family master of the first peerless family, I couldn't provide you with the heaven's grace dew. It was my incompetence. Therefore, I ignored you and reminded you many times to remain loyal to the family. But in the end, you didn't understand what I meant and caused such a huge massacre at the Broken Sky Mountain." His words conveyed deep disappointment. Upon hearing that, the Feng Hua Dao master's face turned as white as a sheet. She said, "No, impossible. How could the family master know about what happened that year? At that time, apart from me and the young master of the second peerless family, only his trusted aide was there." "Wait, family master, you bribed the trusted aide of the young master?" The golden-eyed gentleman's silence was equivalent to admitting it. The Feng Hua Dao master gasped. She felt that the usually gentle and elegant family master was now like an abyss, unfathomable. He had quietly placed a chess piece in such a deep place as the second peerless family. The second peerless family probably didn't have many core secrets that could be kept secret. "Feng Hua, be a human in your next life." The golden-eyed gentleman sighed and threw out a dazzling golden domain. The Feng Hua Dao master's eyes were filled with panic. While releasing her own domain to resist, she shouted, "Family master, please spare my life." What answered her was a silent domain shrouding her. The two domains collided. The Feng Hua Dao master's domain was unable to resist and was burned to ashes by the golden light. His body had also disappeared within the golden flames. Suyi watched the whole process, and his pupils shrank slightly. They were both Dao masters, but the golden-eyed gentleman was much stronger than the Feng Hua Dao master. The golden-eyed gentleman silently watched the Feng Hua Dao master turn into ashes and dissipate. A touch of complex emotions flashed in his eyes. Then he calmed down and turned around to land on the heavenly legacy warship. "What do you think of this ending?" The golden-eyed gentleman sat down and smiled warmly. Suyi was neither servile nor overbearing. He said, "Nothing much. After all, I'm still a wanted person by the first peerless family." The news that the Feng Hua Dao master was a traitor was only known to those present. The outside world still believed that Su Yu had betrayed them. "To be honest, I'm quite satisfied. This is the only way you can help me with one thing," the golden-eyed gentleman said. The relationship between them was unusually harmonious, and there wasn't the slightest bit of unhappiness in the past. "Is this why the family master wanted to speak to me privately through the golden bell?" It turned out that the golden bell contained the golden-eyed gentleman's words. He knew that Su Yu was innocent and hoped that Su Yu would take Bai Yun Hongxian as a hostage and cooperate with him to put on a show. That was why the previous scene had taken place. "Of course," the golden-eyed gentleman said. "I hope you can infiltrate the Pirate Alliance as a spy." Upon hearing that, Su Yu stared at the gentle man in front of him. He reminded Su Yu of a person, Dongfang Xia of the Daiyu Empire. They were both astute, but the golden-eyed gentleman was more unfathomable. To be able to plant his own people around the young master of the second peerless family, his scheming ability was evident. Now that he was going to arrange for him to join the Pirate Alliance, it was really a good plan. "Then, you must have prepared a reward that will excite me," Su Yu said lightly. The golden-eyed gentleman smiled. "How about betrothing my daughter to you?" His words startled by Yun Hongxian. Was her father joking? Be serious. This joke isn't funny. Would the young lady of the first peerless family, the future heir, be betrothed to someone whose background was unknown? Moreover, in the eyes of the golden-eyed gentleman, Su Yu is just an insignificant person. It really isn't funny, the golden-eyed gentleman said calmly as he stared into Su Yu's eyes. He didn't want to betroth by Yun Hongxian to Su Yu, but he wanted to see how Su Yu would react. If he really had improper thoughts about his daughter, the following conversation would probably be a different kind of unharmonious atmosphere. There was only time for one chapter, and the remaining chapter would be posted at night. Chapter 2195. Fortunately, he still had some self-awareness. Therefore, they could still continue to negotiate peacefully. Do you have something you want to do? Golden-eyed Lang Jun asked confidently. As the head of the number 1 peerless family, he indeed had such confidence. Send me to the sinful woman palace, Su Yu said calmly. Since the other party was so confident, what was there for him to hesitate for? Hearing this, the golden-eyed scholar froze. He sucked in a breath of cold air and said, The sinful lady palace? Your request is beyond my capabilities. Let's change it to something else. His expression was slightly awkward, but it immediately returned to normal. If you can't send me there, then you can tell me where the sinful lady palace is. This, golden-eyed Lang Jun hesitated. I don't know either, Su Yu calmly asked. Then why should I be a spy for you? After failing to fulfill both of his requests, the golden-eyed scholar put down his pride and said, It's not that I can't do it, but there's probably no one in the 7 ultimate civilizations who can fulfill your request. He hoped that Su Yu could change his condition. I wanted to get the heavens pure dust, but you didn't fulfill it. I want to get a clue about a place, but you couldn't satisfy me either. To be honest, I'm quite disappointed in your number 1 family, Su Yu said as he stood up. The so-called 7-star civilization was nothing more than this. Seeing that the negotiations were about to collapse, Yun Hongxian became anxious. Suddenly, she had an idea and said, Father, don't we have the sky seeking well? After being reminded, the golden-eyed playboy's eyes flickered, and his face revealed a hint of hesitation. Only when Su Yu was about to leave did she say, Wait. He said, Just as my daughter said, our number 1 peerless clan has a heavenly well that can answer all questions in the world. Is that so? Su Yu expressed his doubt. Golden-eyed Lang Jun waved his hand, and an image appeared. A dilapidated and dried-up well was hidden in a certain place under the protection of layers of Downlord seals. This is the Heavenly Inquiry well created by the Sky Legacy Emperor when he was still alive. If more than 10 Downlords are channeling their great desolation energy into it at the same time, they will be able to activate it and ask a question. The response from the well will give you the answer you want. Su Yu's eyes flickered slightly. It looked a little like the undying ancestral demon. However, the authenticity of it was still questionable. You don't have to worry about this. As long as you ask a few people who know the ins and outs, they will know that our number 1 peerless clan has such a sky inquiry well. Su Yu nodded slowly. I'll believe in this ancient well for now, but why would you open it for me? Using 10 Dao masters to attack at the same time is no small feat. Golden-eyed Lang Jun said calmly, You can ask around if I, Golden-eyed Lang Jun, have broken my promise. As long as someone tells you that I have broken my promise, you can give up on the mission midway. He made such a solemn vow, which indeed made him seem trustworthy. He had to find an opportunity to ask the people who knew about it. Then, how long do you plan to keep me undercover? Could it be 100 years? Su Yu asked. The golden-eyed scholar waved his hand. Of course not. I only hope that after you become a spy, you can help us complete one thing. That is to gather the strength of the Pirate Alliance and deal a destructive blow to the 2nd peerless family. His answer was as expected. Golden-eyed Playboy probably did not plan on destroying the entire Pirate Alliance by himself. There must be another motive for making Su Yu a spy. Now, it seemed to be the case. The golden-eyed scholar smiled faintly. How about it? Are you willing to give it a try? Did Su Yu have a choice? He had gone to great lengths to find clues about the location of the sinful lady palace. so he naturally could not give up just like that. Then, how do you plan to make the Pirate Alliance accept an outsider like me? Suyu asked. Huh, this is why I put you on the wanted list, even though I know you have been wronged. The golden-eyed scholar smiled. The Pirate Alliance only accepts people who have committed the most heinous crimes. You slaughtered the younger generation of the first peerless family, so you are the best candidate. After thinking for a moment, Suyu said thoughtfully, even if I join them, I will be the most ordinary pirate member, right? It will be very difficult to become their core in a short time and influence their actions. The golden-eyed scholar smiled faintly. That will depend on your own ability. After a moment of silence, Suyu said, all right, leave it to me. The golden-eyed scholar gave Suyu an astrolabe and said, the Pirate Alliance was besieged by us last time and suffered heavy casualties. Now, they're recruiting new pirate members on a large scale. If you go here and state your identity, you will probably be put in an important position. With the astrolabe in hand, Suyu set off immediately. Biyun Hongxian's beautiful eyes flashed with a hint of joy. She said, with Mr. Su's help, Father's grand ambition will soon succeed. The golden-eyed scholar said indifferently, he is just a pawn. My ambition is based on my years of planning. Biyun Hongxian smiled faintly and did not refute. It's just that I have a feeling that Mr. Su is not an ordinary person. The golden-eyed scholar looked at Biyun Hongxian meaningfully and said, restrain your feelings. A person like him is not worthy of you. Biyun Hongxian asked, what kind of person is worthy of him? You mean the famous nine-colored heavenly sovereign? Shaking his head, the golden-eyed scholar said with a smile, why do you say such things out of anger? What kind of person is the nine-colored heavenly senior? Even the sinful woman was hunted down by him. His words shocked all the people in the galaxy. No matter how blind he is, he will not be interested in our little peerless family. Biyun Hongxian said calmly, Father, it is really difficult for me to be happy. Am I really that unbearable to look at? Haha, in the 7 unique civilizations, you and Princess Peepa are naturally peerless figures, but in the eyes of those big shots, you are just a skeleton. Biyun Hongxian laughed at herself. In short, if you want to find someone, you need to find at least one of the heirs of the 7 unique families. Su Rushu is lacking in all aspects and is far from qualified to be your spouse. Biyun Hongxian's face was calm, but in her heart, she was thinking that if Su Rushu's body was not exhausted, with the powerful combat power that he had used to kill the White Bone Path Master, how many of the heirs of the 7 unique families could resist him? Apart from Xia Rukin, the number 1 of the 7 unique civilizations, there should be no one who could rival him, right? However, Biyun Hongxian knew very well that the heirs of the 7 unique families that her father was talking about were actually Xia Rukin. In the eyes of her proud father, only he was worthy of his daughter. Back to Suyu. With the star compass in his hand, he did not rush over immediately. Instead, he looked for a deserted civilization. Come out. He touched the space of the Buddha pearl with his palm, and a flying dragon appeared. It was the evil dragon. Release the power of heaven and earth that you have absorbed. Suyu decided to temper his body here. The evil dragon rolled its eyes and said, My lord, this power of heaven and earth might be a waste if it is just tempering the body. Do you have anything to say? Suyu asked. The evil dragon lowered its head and said respectfully, My lord, how far have you cultivated the evil dragon Bible? Hearing this, Suyu's heart skipped a beat. He had already cultivated the first chapter of the Evil Dragon Bible, the Nirvana of the Evil Dragon, to its peak. However, he had not grasped the key point of the second chapter, the Evil Dragon Imperial Sky. This Bible was obtained from this evil dragon. Could it be that there was some secret to it that he did not know?